Well, the funny thing is, a lot of the TV shows that are popular, or the streaming shows, they're really not much more than people talking.
Talking, yeah.
But I guess they have the production values to make that tolerable to the audience, And they look, the images impressive enough, and I guess the actors are personable enough.
So why didn't that work with Star Trek: The Motion Picture?
Are we beginning now?
We can,
Is that your
yes.
way of
That's my segue. Yeah.
um,
Even William Shatner said that it was sluggish after he watched the premiere.
yeah. Well, I mean, back when they were making Star Trek: The Motion Picture, that was after Star Wars, and so there was a lot of attention to the word that was coming from the set about the problems they were having. It was a troubled production pretty much from the jump. Started, I guess initially they were thinking about doing a Star Trek movie, and then they decided, no, we'll do a Star Trek TV show. And I guess they had a significant amount of development on that TV show. I forget what it was called, Phase 2 or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
And they had gotten, I think I read that they got most of the original cast back. I don't think William Shatner was involved. Maybe Leonard Nimoy wasn't involved either. I'm not sure. Anyway, they actually went to the extent of building sets and casting people, new characters. Persis Kambata, who's in this movie, she was originally supposed to be in that series. Another fellow was supposed to play a Spock-like character in this proposed series. He was worked into the opening scenes of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, not playing a Vulcan, playing one of the people that is on that space station that see the Klingons being destroyed by the V'ger cloud. So he got a little bit of attention for that, but I don't know if he ever went on to anything else. I guess that's an example of how cruel Hollywood can be. Right? One minute you're a star of a TV show.
Yeah. Next minute you're just a small blip at the beginning of a movie.
Right. But I was a big fan of Star Trek, and I can prove it just by holding up a few items. Here's the little program. This goes to show you how unsophisticated they were when they started the Star Trek conventions. This was actually the fifth one they had. I guess it was in 1976. And it was in New York. And they had a full roster of events. January 16th to 19th in 1976 in one of the hotels. I'm not sure what hotel it was in. Anyway, I attended this, and I bought some tribbles that are long since fallen to pieces. And about the only piece of memorabilia that I have, other than that little program, is the bags, which have these rather weak sketches of the artists. And this is the motto that I guess everybody back at that time was trying to convince themselves that this was true, that Star Trek still lives. But it was only when word got out that they were thinking of doing a movie, and that that was actually going forward because of the success of Star Wars and Close Encounters.
Yeah.
Then it was like magazines like Fangoria doing these articles, almost constant articles. That's the sister publication.
Starlog, yeah, I remember that one.
This one has an article in it. Well, William Shatner says that as far as he's concerned, the whole thing is dead, that his contract with Paramount is ended. And as far as he's concerned, he's not doing the movie. So that's the sort of stuff you're constantly hearing. They actually had columns from particular people. The person who wrote the column in the Starlog issue actually went on and wrote The Making of Star Trek: The Motion Picture with Gene Roddenberry, a book that's still available on Amazon. So there was a lot of talk. And when the movie finally came out, the first day that it opened, I think, was a major snowstorm in New York. And I, being a dedicated Trek fan, actually went and stood for a half hour at the local bus station, hoping that maybe a bus would come along, with snow up to here, hoping that we can get into Manhattan, because it was done as a roadshow release. I don't know if you're familiar with that term. They don't do it anymore. But back in the 50s and 60s, if they had big prestigious movies that they really wanted to, make a big deal out of, they would have select theaters and reserved seating. And they usually did it for like big musicals and things
Yeah.
like that. And they usually did it in theaters like Radio City Music Hall that had 1,000 seats. So they weren't, you know, they
I
got,
guess they still kind of do that now, but more of like, I remember seeing trailers and it would, or talking about movies that premiering in New York and LA first,
yeah.
right? And before it comes worldwide or whatever.
Nowadays, they do that for indie films that really can't afford wide releases and movies that they're not confident will do particularly well in wide release. But I guess it was Jaws, Jaws and Star Wars were the ones that made the studios realize that doing the slow release, start here and expand, that really wasn't smart because you could conceivably make back, as they do now routinely, you could make back your whole production budget
In the weekend.
in a weekend, right? If you
Yeah.
have a big hit, right? So Jaws and Star Wars pretty much ended that. Robert Wise had a little experience with roadshow productions because he did Sound of Music and he did West Side Story. Well, I assume both of those were probably roadshow presentations. As a matter of fact, you can almost know for sure just by looking to see if it has an overture at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Which they did here rather foolishly, I think. Star Trek.
Yeah.
So that combination of a major snowstorm and the fact that it was reserved seating and it was only one theater in, one or two theaters in Manhattan. I think it was actually the Paramount Theater in the Gulf and Weston building that was running it. That was back when Paramount was owned by Gulf and Weston, the oil company. So in their big complex, they had this little theater, which was actually underground. You had to go in this little concrete hole in the ground and go down escalator. And at the end of the show, the ushers would actually chase you out, which I thought was kind of stupid because for Star Trek: The Motion Picture, after the first weekend, there was hardly anybody in the theater. But anyway, I finally managed to get in when the snow subsided, and I got my program to prove that I was there on the first day, or in the first weekend at least. And I guess again with Superman and with like a couple of the other movies that I had programs for that we've discussed. Usually I got my first indication of what might be wrong with the movie just by looking at the program. First thing that made me question whether or not we were going to be in for some rough sailing was this picture of the aliens. I'm going to try to see if I can get this positioned here. Now, most of these aliens never really show up in the movie.
Right.
So these were probably like background characters for that big crew assembly scene. But this guy here, it's kind of hard to do this. I can see what guys on TV get.
Yeah.
This guy here,
right there.
This guy, he's wearing obviously like a Halloween mask, and he's got it's like just a pullover mask with holes for the eyes, and his arms aren't made up to match his face. So I assume these characters were not meant to be seen prominently in the film, and they aren't.
I could barely make it out, but it reminds me of the people from the man cave episode.
Yeah, well,
the people with the pulsing brain. That's just what it reminded me of.
It looks like it might be, but that actually was a pretty decent makeup job.
Yeah.
But the only character here that actually gets any real screen time is the Klingon.
Yeah.
Anyway, that made me worry. And then when I saw the opening credits, I worried a bit more because apparently they were so rushed to get this movie out. It was really just whatever we can throw together. Michael Eisner, who was involved somehow, I don't know what position he had at Paramount at the time, but he was in charge in some way, the guy that would go on and have such great success at Disney.
Yeah.
He was quoted as saying that we have a date, the movie's going to be out, and I don't care if we send out Black Leader. Black Leader is just blank film.
Yeah.
And the opening credits actually are pretty close to Black Leader. Because they just have white letters on a black background. But Jerry Goldsmith's music, I guess probably important to mention right off the top, is really the best thing in this movie.
Oh
yeah. He saved their ass, because without that music, this movie would not work at all. It is only because his music is so insistent that something dramatic and wonderful is happening that there is any drama in this movie at all. Right? It's a complete completely bloodless thing. And I'm really happy to see that this movie is getting a lot of new attention. And a lot of young folks who didn't see the movie in the theaters originally and who didn't go through that extraordinary, almost traumatic disappointment that I suffered, which is,
Yeah. Now, do you enjoy the movie now, or did you enjoy
well,
it?
I enjoyed watching it, but it's still a very flawed movie.
Yeah.
And many of the same flaws that existed then still exist. And, you know, the idea of sort of trying to fix the color a little bit, because they didn't really do much work on the color timing for the original release for the obvious reasons. They were rushed. They didn't have time for that. So everything is kind of pale and bluish. In a way, they were ahead of their time with that. There's a lot of movies that intentionally go for that now. But this 4K version, which is really just a sort of fixed up version of the director's cut that was put
Yeah.
out, I guess, about, is it 20 years ago now?
Something like that. Yeah.
That was the one where Robert Wise, the director, said, "I'm going to fix this." I guess he asked Paramount for permission to do a director's cut. So I guess he felt it was a little embarrassing that movie had gone out that way.
Yeah.
So he did his version of it, which was well received. Everybody agreed that it was an improvement. But they did apparently in standard definition because it was only going to be released on DVD. So this time they've upgraded or up-resed it to 4K, and they've done proper color correction.
Yeah.
They've done a little judicious editing to take out some extraneous stuff. They've wisely removed all that extra footage that had been added for the ABC telecast of the movie. Because ABC was so desperate just to have a longer movie so they could sell more advertising time, that they didn't notice that there were some scenes where the special effects hadn't been completed.
Right.
So there's one notorious scene with Kirk coming out of the Enterprise in a spacesuit, and you can see like rafters and two by fours
Right.
where there should have been a matte painting, of the rest of the Enterprise. So that was remarkable. And I guess they were thinking when they ran that on TV is in standard definition, nobody's going to be able to notice. I
Right.
bet most people probably didn't notice, but
They
it's still,
probably didn't.
still kind of amazing that anybody would do something, that any, a network would run a movie like that. But that just is sort of emblematic of the whole problem with this movie, is that it's very sloppily done. I don't know. You could spend the rest of your life listening to all the different stories that are being told, all the different points of view of the different people that were involved, of what went wrong and how this ended up becoming such a shit show. But it sure does look like there just was a lack of a sort of unifying vision of what they should be going for. Or to put it another way, the two guys who were providing some vision, Gene Roddenberry and Robert Wise, their visions conflicted, and their visions were wrong.
Right.
Robert Wise was wrong to take the sort of cold 2001: A Space Odyssey approach to this. That's not the type of movie that this should be. That's not the type of story Star Trek is ever going to be.
Yeah. See, I'd never watched the original series. I didn't watch it growing up, so I didn't even watch these movies until late '90s, probably even like mid '90s. I think the Next Generation movie had just come out.
Oh, really?
But I was living with a friend. He had the VHS box set of the Star Trek motion pictures, and I sat down and watched all of them, and I enjoyed it. I was like, man, this is really good. I really like it. And then I went and got the Next Generation movie. Really enjoyed that, but I still never watched the shows. I was just a fan of the movies. It wasn't until later on that I watched the original series, and then started getting into Next Generation.
Well, if you
I wasn't comparing this movie to the original series at that time when I watched it. Watching it now, when I watched it the other day, and I'm just like picking it apart, and I was like, I really want to like this. I mean, I still like it.
Well, that's it.
I do have a lot of problems with it.
You want to like it. That is true. And nowadays, I showed it actually to a friend of mine who had never seen it before and is not really a big Star Trek person, and he quite liked it. He thought it was very very nice, a very nice movie. Has a good heart, I guess you could say.
But I do agree with the the long scenes at the. I mean, I know it's okay. This was what 10 years after the TV show ended, right?
Right.
So it
Well,
was,
that's when it was made.
yeah.
According to the movie, I think
It's
it's
only
only supposed
four
to be
years later.
right.
Yeah, four
So
years. But I mean, I get it. It's Star Trek. It's on the first time on the big screen. We're gonna awe you with like the Enterprise flying over. But it's like, do you need a 10-minute scene of the
yeah,
shuttlecraft, flying by? And it's like, we really don't need that. They've already done that in 2001.
right. Well,
But
that's that.
that really slows it down.
Yeah, and it also sort of indicates, let's face it, when you're watching a movie, you're always looking for signs that there's no there. There's
Yeah,
no story. And that really is the central problem here. There's no story, really. I mean, it's the vaguest suggestion of a plot. But when you have a movie like this and it takes you an hour just to get them out in space
yeah,
and that's and all the things that happen that would provide any sort of spark of energy or excitement, they're all like silly things that shouldn't happen, like a transporter accident. That was a terrible mistake. You don't want your hero to be indirectly responsible for a horrible, agonizing
yeah.
death of two innocent crew members. That's not a good way to make your audience like your hero, right?
Now, let me ask you this about Kirk. Do you see if you agree with me about Kirk? Original series, he was obviously cocky and he always won. In this movie, he kind of seemed like a pompous asshole. I'm taking the ship back over, and
Right. No,
I
I
don't know.
agree
It
with
just
you.
it
Yeah.
seemed like a little bit more like
They were
comparing
looking.
that character to
It's
the show.
fake. It's fake conflict.
Yeah,
We don't have a story, so we can't have our established Kirk going out and confronting whatever that problem is,
yeah,
because we don't have anything for him to confront. So instead, they do the internal stuff. Oh, he's insecure. He's not. He wants to get the ship back, and all that sort of thing. He's not sure if he can handle it anymore. And they did a little bit of that in the second one as well, with him being unsure about being too old, and some
yeah,
discussion about whether or not he should have ever accepted the Admiralty. Uh, but that is just sort of like a sidelight, as we are actually having an adventure.
yeah,
This is space adventure. This is find something in space and grapple with it, deal with it, whatever problem it presents. And in order to do that effectively, you have to have all your characters, all your hero, all the folks on your hero side have to be established and secure in their place, so that the audience feels comfortable with them. We don't want to see this business with Kirk screwing some guy out of the
yeah,
captain's chair. That doesn't make us feel good about him. Uh, when I was watching it, I was thinking this sort of reflects possibly what Gene Roddenberry was going through, because there was a lot of political stuff that went on in the course of the years of Star Trek.
right.
And also, I sort of the dynamic that you see here reminds me of like the disaster movies. I don't know if you ever saw Airport, I guess it was the first of the big disaster
Yeah,
movies.
I think I've seen all of those. I'm a big natural disaster and air
Oh, I am
disaster
too. We
movie.
should
Yeah,
we should do it. We
we
should do
should
an
do one. Yeah,
episode sometime. But the sort of formula that they usually had, certainly with that first film, Airport, was guys that are established, they're powerful men, and they're in competition with each other, and they're also sleeping with their female subordinates or having affairs with their female subordinates, and they're doing it all in very similar surroundings. I mean, the Enterprise sort of looks like the airport.
yeah,
uh, that whole idea of like middle-aged men, powerful guys, dealing with office politics and their little romances, and maybe they're like in Airport. I guess it's Burt Lancaster. He's having an affair with his secretary, right? I
yep.
guess he's estranged from his wife, and Dean Martin is the pilot on the plane that is the focus of the story. He's sleeping with his stewardess,
Yeah,
also married guy, cheating on his wife, and all of that is sort of intermingled with all the sort of power stuff, of who's in charge and whether or not people are following orders, and so that sort of comes through here in this movie. It's really all about like office politics on the
Yeah.
Enterprise. And it's not a very pleasant thing to see, and it also, I would say, is not really in keeping with the sort of optimistic vision that Gene Roddenberry supposedly had.
Right.
And that was one of the things that the people on Next Generation always complained about, was that he insisted that the conflict had to come from outside. It couldn't be amongst the characters. Everybody was supposed to get along. I can see why that would be a problem for a TV series, but for this movie, it probably would have been a better approach. I don't know why he went against his own idea. He maybe didn't think he was, but rather than dealing with all the sort of interpersonal stuff, why not establish the characters? You don't really need to, because folks were still watching the TV show.
Yeah.
It's not like we have to be reintroduced to these characters, and we don't have to have them coming back. It's not like they're senior citizens. At that point, they were still fairly young people.
Yeah.
They didn't look that much different from the way we remember them. So you don't really need to put too much work into reestablishing the characters. Start the movie with them all in place, just as we remember them.
Yeah, they should. Yeah, they should have just already. I mean, because you got the Forrest Kelly shows up, and of course you got the beard, and
you got to go through all that
stuff. The whole thing of him not wanting to go, teleporting, he doesn't want to go into space and all that,
and particularly, it's like they're not even paying attention to the scenes that are before and after each scene, right? I forget what the sequence of events is, but it sort of makes his criticism of the transporter seem a little less amusing when two people horribly die.
Yeah.
And it couldn't, and they emphasize how agonizing the death is. Oh, what we got back didn't live very long.
Yeah,
well,
thankfully.
Who wants to hear that? This is supposed to be a clean, everything in its place future, like a utopia where everything works. And for no reason that has to do with the story that they're telling, they have this problem. That's
this
one
mishap. Yeah.
You're never supposed to have something like that happen incidentally. It's one thing to say, well, Captain, the transporter isn't working, and that adds a little extra drama or suspense to your story. But to just for shits and giggles kill off two characters, or just to clear a space for Mr. Spock to come back.
Yeah.
To kill off two characters, a transporter malfunction happens once in the movie for no reason that anybody really knows, other than the fact that Captain Kirk is forcing them to get going faster. And then he follows that up with almost another disaster, right?
With the wormhole.
Right. He has the transporter malfunction. He gets them into a wormhole. And then he's about to use the phasers until the guy tells him they shouldn't do that. Now, I don't know if they were suggesting, I guess they were, that because the phasers were passed through the engine, sounds like a really wonky way. Anyway, but I guess the idea is that, what he actually says in the movie is that the phasers, unbeknownst to Captain Kirk, the phasers are going to be passing through the warp core or whatever their engine. Right? So they wouldn't work. That's what he says. He says words to that effect. So that wouldn't work, right? Okay, so that wouldn't be a catastrophic situation, right?
Right.
Then immediately, it just means that the phasers wouldn't work. It might mean that the meteor or whatever they're heading towards is going to hit them, but then Kirk says, "Oh, you should save the ship." He climbs down off his high horse.
Yeah.
Well, if it was just a question of the phasers not working, you shouldn't really have that dramatic scene. Why couldn't he simply say to Kirk, "Oh, you can't use the phasers; they're not working. Use the..." Instead of rushing over and grabbing starting to play with Chekhov's buttons and everything. It's like, well, why was this trip really necessary? And that whole business in the warp core or the wormhole, that is all fake drama too, right?
Yeah.
So let's have a smeary effect, and that'll convince people that.
That was just after what, like 20 minutes of just trying to get the engines to work, right?
Right.
So, just like nothing but problems here.
They got a lot of problems, and when Decker steps forward and prevents. I guess we're meant to assume that if they'd used the phases, something terrible would have happened.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go with that. So once then Kirk takes him to his briefing room and chews him out, or is preparing to chew him out. And I don't think. See, the thing about Kirk and Picard is that they're sort of like organization men. They're the top of an organization. They rely on the people underneath them to do their jobs. They're not in competition.
Yeah.
It's like, shut up, Mr. Spock, I'm in control here. That's not the sort of thing you get from him. It's, Mr. Spock, what do you think? What should we do now? What are your suggestions? Right? And they did that all through the show, right? Picard continued that tradition. You got situations where, Captain, the whole universe is blowing up in 30 seconds. Turn around, what do you think we should do? Suggestions, that's the sort of guy you want to have in control. You don't want somebody who is so desperate to hold on to control, or to hold on to the appearance of control, that he's ignoring people that are saying, don't do that because everything's going to blow up, right? That's not the guy you want. And it's not our Kirk.
Right, yeah.
Kirk would know better than that. And Kirk would certainly know better, having, fell on his ass that way. And now this is like the second time since he's been on the ship, to then chew out the guy instead of turning to him and say, why'd you do that?
Yeah.
Come to my briefing room immediately. That's not our Kirk. And I also, there's a little something less important, I guess, but it sure doesn't feel less important. That fucking toupee. I don't know.
Yeah,
no. Captain William Shatner was on Star Trek for 3 years, and he did a lot of personal appearances during that time, and nobody would have ever been able to tell if you didn't say he's wearing a toupee. Nobody would have ever known.
Right.
It was a great toupee. Now, I realized that in the TV show, it was a very stylized presentation, the lighting and heavy makeup on everybody. So maybe you wouldn't notice if somebody was wearing a toupee.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody in the cast is wearing a hairpiece of some kind, right? But in this movie, he's got that thing that looks like a Persian cat sitting on his head. There's nothing, and it's even worse in the original version of the motion picture. I think by darkening the picture and by changing the skin tones a little bit, it hides it a little bit, but it's like his head is like this.
Yeah.
There's no place where the hair is coming out. It's just all sort of, hanging there like a piece of lettuce. I don't know why. How could they look at that and say, okay,
that looks good. Yeah.
Let's get time to shoot. And how could it possibly be so hard for a movie that cost supposedly around $50 million to get a decent wig for the guy that's starring in the film? And you can't blame Shatner, right? Actually, he's in the best shape he had been in years. He pulled himself together. He looks like a movie star.
Yeah.
Except for that damn wig. And it seems to change from shot to shot. The other thing that's ridiculous about this movie is because they realized that the whole movie takes place on the bridge of the Enterprise, or in the Enterprise sets. And so they were so desperate to try to liven things up that they had the characters going through this almost hilarious parade of costume changes.
Yeah.
Like Captain Kirk is a different costume to wear every room in the ship.
Yeah, that was one of my notes when I was watching it today. I was like, I don't know, like the uniforms in this movie seemed more outdated than what the original series.
Yes,
like these are dated, but I still don't know if they're the worst or my favorite uniforms, because whenever Spock shows up in his, I'm like, well, that one looks pretty good.
Yes.
But everybody else is wearing like 70s like knit sweater fabric, and I'm just like,
yeah,
why would you do that?
One of the critics said he looked like a muscular dentist.
Yeah.
The big mistake, of course, and I'm coming up on my 60th birthday soon, so I really know what I'm talking about here. Once you get past a certain age, it isn't flattering to have wide open collars for people, and they seem to be taking the cue from people like Bob Guccione or Hugh Hefner.
Yeah, the only thing missing was a gold chain to hang in the
and
chest
actually,
area there.
McCoy, when he shows up, he's got the beard, and he's got the chain, he's got something hanging around his head, and he's got a big tuft of hair.
Yeah.
So it's like a visit to the Playboy Mansion.
Yeah.
But if you, I mean, we expect that certain trends in design and in fashion are going to show up in every movie. It's sort of inevitable, right?
Yeah.
But a person who's doing the costumes for a science fiction movie, the first thing they should say is anything that's popular now we can't use.
Can't
right?
use, yeah.
Like open collar. There's a couple of folks that are wearing that had the collar open. That's like Saturday Night Fever. That
Yeah.
became very popular for a while.
I don't think I've seen any bell bottoms, but I really wasn't paying attention.
Well, the other absurdity is the costumes that they have the security personnel in.
Yeah.
I mean, we went through 3 years on Star Trek, and the security personnel usually just wore a red shirt, so you could tell who was going to die soon.
Yeah.
In this, they got them wearing like
helmets,
old-fashioned football helmets, right?
yeah.
Or wrestling, I guess.
Yeah.
And they're wearing what do they call those shoes that I guess that women like Uggs? Is that what
Oh
they
yeah.
call? They look like they're wearing Uggs.
Yeah.
Those sort of big puffy shoes, and they just look ridiculous. And you think to yourself, these folks are going to stand around like that all the time?
All the time, yeah.
Are they expecting trouble? Well, what sort of use? It's not like they're guarding a bank, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, and I don't know why they would even need this movie. This storyline didn't need any kind of like military. So why even put them in there?
Well, I think what it is, the director and the 15,000 writers that were desperately trying to come up with a story, so when it became clear that nobody had any sort of overarching vision of what this was supposed to be about, you have all the production designers and costume people sort of throw in their little 2 cents in. And nobody's there to swat it down and say, no, that's stupid. Like, for instance, and you don't see this much in this version of the movie. I took a brief look at the original version, and there might be more of it in it. But in the Enterprise bridge above Captain Kirk's chair, there's a glass dome that looks like a salad bowl that's been stuck to the ceiling, and it's filled with what looks like piss. And apparently the idea that some genius came up with was that was like a level in a carpenter's level. You'd be able to tell if the ship was
level
by looking at the water. Now that is a stupid fucking idea.
Yeah.
You got a spaceship practically overflowing with blinking, beeping technology, and you need a goddamn bowl of water over your head?
Yeah.
Dumb as can be. And why, if the ship is going this ways and you're falling on your ass, why would you need to check the water? Stupid. Also, the business with the armrests that come together over his thighs, that won't work. That won't work. No. If you hit something that's hard enough that you need a restraint to hold you in your chair, you don't want the restraints to be on your thighs.
No.
Because your whole body is going to go forward and your legs are going to get broken or badly bruised, at least. The other thing is they go to the effort of showing us Captain Kirk applying those things when things get hairy, but then they show you some shots of the other side of the Enterprise bridge, and there's a bunch of folks standing at their posts. They don't even have chairs.
Yeah.
What do? I mean, are they supposed to just sort of hang on?
Yeah.
Or they probably have like straps, like a subway.
Probably, yeah.
That's just, they're not thinking. I mean, Nicholas Meyer, God bless him. And I guess it's kind of a cliche now to say how he was the guy that saved Star Trek. But he was the director on Wrath of Khan. Harv Bennett, who probably deserves as much credit, as somebody we don't really hear about that much. He's passed away a couple of years ago, I guess. But he was a producer of TV stuff. I mean, his great contribution to Western civilization up to that point was being involved with the Mod Squad and $6 Million Man.
Yeah.
And I guess it was because of the $6 Million Man that when Paramount was looking for some way to immortalize all this junk that they collected to make the Star Trek the motion picture, they said, do something cheap. You can do it cheap, come up with something and do it. And he got the job. And he wrote a story or a screenplay, and then that went through different versions, and I guess Nicholas Meyer contributed to it as well. But the vision was there right from the start. You could see Nicholas Meyer had opinions about things. He wanted things to look a certain way. and he, for instance, brought back the something closer to the original transporter beam. I don't know why they thought that that was necessary to change for the motion picture.
I don't know.
You know, I mean, that was a perfectly good special effect. You could do a slightly better version if you have a $50 million movie.
Yeah.
Why do you need to completely redesign the beam? You know, and other things like at where their belt buckle would be if they had a belt, they had these black boxes.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you my toy.
Okay.
My only surviving. That sounds like a terrible thing to say in the middle of a podcast, right? That's like a Harvey Weinstein line.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you my toy. Now, this is the only piece of Star Trek memorabilia other than the books that I still have.
I have that one, but I couldn't find it.
Oh yeah.
And then I've got. I mean, it's probably packed up somewhere. And then I've got.
Oh, you got a
I've got my
phaser.
phaser. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And does it work? Does it do
Yeah.
anything?
Well, I need to get batteries in, but it does. It does light up and make sound effects. And
amazingly, this has been in storage in a cardboard box in a corner of my room for must be 10 years now.
yeah.
Still works.
Yep.
So they're fresh and running.
Yep.
So I don't know what sort of magnificent batteries.
Yeah.
But anyway, in Star Trek the Motion Picture, they replaced these with that silly thing on their arms,
Right.
which looks like the sort of bracelet that they put on winos in the hospital. And they have something similar to this, roughly their shape, but it's right in the center of their where their belt would be.
Right.
And I was reading that that was supposed to be some sort of bio monitor that the doctors on the ship, and I guess Nurse Chapel has become a doctor.
Yeah.
Happens, right? That happens all the time. Nurses are working their way towards being doctors. That's the way it works. Anyway, I guess her and Dr. McCoy, they'll have to fight it out. But apparently the information from these little bio monitors can be read by them so they can make sure everybody is healthy.
Yeah.
It never is used in the movie that I can recall. So why bother? Why bother spending money having dozens, maybe hundreds of these made up? Waste of money, right?
Yep.
Why do they waste money on stuff like this? Because nobody knew what they would do. Nobody had any vision. Nobody had any story. I mean, if you have a great script, you could say, oh, we need this, we need that. We need. Somebody does a breakdown of the script. You know, all the props you need. You don't have people throwing a bunch of silly shit onto the set that doesn't make any sense. Anyway, that's the, we covered Captain Kirk's toupee, and we covered the silly armrests in the chair. One of the things about having that little silly looking chair, that scrawny looking chair, is that in the original series, that chair was iconic as well.
Oh yeah.
You know, people wanted a chair like that.
Oh
right?
yeah.
Because it suggested power, and it suggested somebody who was in complete control, right? He had everything right in front of him. He could speak to everybody on the ship, and you know, all the, I don't know what else he could do. Order.
He was the head of the household.
Right. And he had
his
a little
recliner, he's got his remote for the
exactly,
TV.
That's it. Or you could say it's like a king's throne.
There you
right?
go, yeah.
Now, some people might say, well, that's not the right tone. We don't want any suggestion that he's superior to other people or royalty or anything like that. But yes, you do. This is a drama.
Yeah.
People want to see who's in charge, right? The whole idea, this is true of James Bond. It's true of Sherlock Holmes. We want to see people who are good at what they do.
Yeah.
We want to see competent people. That's why it's enjoyable to watch, right? How many times in the original series and in the Next Generation did they have a situation where, and you're looking at your watch because you know there's only like 4 minutes left in the episode,
Yeah.
and you're thinking, how the fuck are they going to solve this? And then they turn to Geordie, or they turn to Scotty, or somebody else in the crew, and say, what are we going to do? And the person, well, why you try this, try that, try that. Well, we reroute this, turn that on, turn on, and suddenly the world is saved.
Yeah.
That's what we want to see. That's very gratifying and enjoyable for the audience. Instead, you got a ship where the guy in charge has this shitty little chair and it's wearing a bad toupee. He's fighting with the guy who actually is the captain of the ship
yeah.
for the control of the thing. And everything he does is a mistake that ends up with at least 2 people being killed. So we're not off to a good start. And
No.
then they follow up. I mean, first you got that 10-minute scene of the Enterprise taking off.
Taking off, yeah.
Actually, no, I got to correct myself. First, you got 10 minutes of him just flying around the Enterprise.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Then you have another big sequence where they actually take off, right? And then you actually get out into space. You have those few little things where they go into the wormhole, and then they get that beam of light, the probe that appears on the bridge,
Right.
and that takes away Ilya. And then you get this sort of torturous, long, drawn out thing of the ship going deeper and deeper, deeper into the cloud. And it's just boring as hell, you know? I mean, I enjoyed watching it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed watching it, you know, I don't know, maybe my life is just that dull.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too, and if I watch it tomorrow, I'm still going to enjoy it, but I can still sit there and nitpick it.
Right. Well, maybe that's part of the reason we enjoy it. Right?
Yeah.
It's fun to be kind of a pest with these things.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of people will be very angry to hear that we're not, you know, celebrating it as a masterpiece.
Right. Now was this, because I would assume this came about after the popularity of reruns and the conventions that you mentioned.
Yeah.
So to me, they're making this for the fans. They're not trying to get new people to watch this. So why not just keep the same campy series and just put that on the big screen?
Well, I think, I mean, they probably, after 10 years, they probably could try to avoid making things campy, you know, but I mean, you could make it a little more.
I say campy now. It's campy in
Right.
retrospect to me, but at the time, I'm sure it wasn't considered campy at all.
But I think you're right. What they needed is to go back, and this is what Nicholas Meyer did, go back to that colorful, lusty melodrama.
Yeah, because this movie, the Enterprise and all the costumes just felt sterile and clean,
Yes.
where the original, like you said, the collars, all the different colored shirts, and
the original
the
show,
sets
yeah.
were all colored lights and just clear colored plastic pieces. That's what I loved.
The original DP for I think it was the first season of Star Trek, the original series. I think he was the guy that he was a whole Hollywood hand. I think he might have been the guy that did some of the cinematography for Gone with the Wind. But he would put colors everywhere. He would use all sorts of gels to get colors, even if it didn't make sense in the story.
Right, yeah.
You know, that was the thing that they said, we're doing something that is almost like a play. It's almost like a stage play. All right, that you can't really go anywhere and find these locations. You can't go into space or go to an alien planet. And the things that we can afford don't really look very convincing. So do it in as stylish a way as possible, so that even if it isn't completely convincing, people will still want to go along with you. They'll still enjoy it.
A lot of the sets to me just look like they took something that was being used over on a Western and just adding color to it.
In the original series.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the first pilot, I guess it was the second pilot, Where No Man Has Gone Before, the one with Gary Lockwood and Sally Kellerman, who just passed away recently.
I thought they were on the first, the pilot, the man cave. Or is that what that was?
No, the menagerie or the cage. That was the first
cage.
pilot.
Yeah. Okay.
That was the one with Jeffrey Hunter.
Yeah.
And apparently NBC kind of liked it, but they wanted to see a second pilot, which at the time was unheard of almost.
Yeah.
I mean, you never say unheard of because there's always something. But it was very unusual for a network to ask for a second pilot.
Second pilot, yeah.
So that's when they did Where No Man Has Gone Before. And that's the one where they're using uniforms and props that never actually made it into the eventual series.
Yeah.
I guess they were using most of the props and costumes from the first pilot. Also, DeForest Kelley isn't in the cast. It's, I forget the guy's name. He's an older actor playing.
Yeah.
So if you look at that, you look at the sets for that pilot, their planet sets, their exterior planet sets are pretty elaborate with a lot of sort of colorful sky, clouds in the sky and things like that. And I guess what they realize is if you're going to have a planet every week, you can't go to all that trouble.
Yeah.
So they started to use just simple, like flat colors for the sky. One week it'll be red, one week it'll be blue, and the ground itself was usually just rocky, terrain, and it never looked like the set went back more than 50 feet, if
Right.
that. But that was the beauty of Star Trek, was that it was obviously not an elaborate production, and still it was engrossing and moving and thrilling.
Yeah, because
Often.
the stories were really good. The characters were good. You didn't care that you were on,
Right.
looking at a plain background.
And the people that were making it were such skilled artists and craftsmen that they could take simple things and make them look great.
Yeah.
One of the things that's troubling about the motion picture in both versions, although they've fixed it to a large extent with the new version, is the problem of this background sound. One of the things that was the most recognizable thing about the Enterprise and the TV series was that sound that you heard in the background all the
Yeah.
time. That was a very smart move, because they realized if you just have a bunch of people on a set, or sitting in chairs on a set, there's nothing that indicates that they're in space or that they're moving.
Moving, yeah.
There's
Especially with no windows, yeah.
Yeah, right. The monitor is in front, right? And the things that along the sides that you're seeing the most are they could just be TVs, right?
Yeah.
So you need something that says we're out in space and we're moving. And that sound, which might be this, I don't know if it's supposed to be like a submarine sound or the sound that you'd hear on a battleship, but that was very much part of the feel of what the Enterprise was. When you heard that sound, you knew where you were. In the movie, the original version doesn't really have any of that. Now, I seem to remember, and I watched a little bit of it this afternoon because Paramount Plus has both movies, both versions of them. So I wanted to go back and check a couple of things, some special effects things. My recollection, though, I didn't watch the whole original version. My recollection was you didn't hear anything on the bridge of the Enterprise until the end of the movie. And then you hear the sound of the Enterprise, the famous bridge sound.
Right.
I'm not sure I'm right on that, but that was my impression. Anyway, it should have been through the whole movie, because one of the problems that they had with the bridge was that they used rear projection for all the monitors, all those colored light things that you see on the bridge. They were all rear projected. They had little projectors behind them, so you can imagine there's a lot of noise.
Yeah.
So they couldn't use their recorded sound. Often they couldn't use the recorded sound because they had all this projector sound. So they had to loop a lot of that. And one way to hide the looping, one way to avoid that sort of hollow sound that you get when you're looping, is to layer some background tone over it, So it sort of joins everything together. It unifies the sound. They didn't do that. They have done it in the new version, and that's a smart move. One little problem. Paramount Plus is a streaming platform, and they want people to, average Joe, to watch, and they're assuming that most people are not watching using headphones.
Headphones, right.
If you do watch using headphones, you'll notice that on both versions of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, the sound seems to drop out. There's sort of irregularities in the background sound and in the music. And at first I thought this was a problem with the remaster, but I went back and checked, and it's true in the original version. So it can only be one thing. Paramount Plus is normalizing the audio for the movies that they put up.
Right.
They get tired of hearing people complain it's too low, it's too loud.
Too loud, yeah.
So they push everything into a middle range of sound. They bring the highest sounds down, the loudest sounds down, and they bring the lowest sounds up. Now, this is the problem. If you're making a movie on a wooden set and it's supposed to be on a metal spaceship, and you hear people creaking around, normally the guy who's mixing the audio would drop all that down or replace it with better sound, better background sound. If you suddenly raise all that up, which is what they do when they normalize, you raise all those sounds that are almost inaudible, you bring them all the way up, then people are going to hear all the shitty noises that are,
Yeah.
And every time somebody gets ready to speak, that sound will suddenly drop off. So just before somebody speaks, you'll suddenly hear the background tone, the room tone drop off, because the types of filters that they use, they have like an attack time. They're supposed to suddenly drop the sound down a certain like fraction of a second before the loud sound starts.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to drop the loud sounds. You allow the sounds that are at the proper level, you don't want to drop them down. So the sounds you can't hear are raised up, and then as they get closer to the part that you can hear, that drops down. So you get this sudden dropping down of the room tone all the time, and sometimes of the music. And that's something you can only really hear if you're wearing headphones. If you're just playing it in your living room,
Yeah, or on your smartphone.
Or on your smartphone, unless some, and I guess that is probably now, that's probably where most people would be using headphones.
Yeah.
Because most people would be sitting on a train or something, watching on a smartphone, and they'd have their earbuds in.
Right.
But it was very noticeable in this, and it was surprising to me because I thought to myself, well, they've been talking so much about what a great job they did on remixing the audio, and yet it sounds like something worse than what I would do. But that's not their fault. I wonder if the guys that actually did the audio mix are aware of what Paramount.
Well, yeah, maybe they'll listen. They'll listen. We can tell them.
Yeah. It's probably not a big problem for movies that are being made now because they probably are normalizing the sound before those movies go out.
Well, yeah.
But back in the old days, it wasn't as easy as just dropping a filter on your audio file. So it's the old movies that are going to suffer probably.
Yeah. Now, when I heard that this was coming out, they were doing this 40th anniversary, whatever director's cut. I assumed they were going to touch up and maybe redo some special effects.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really notice anything. Did you watching both versions? Did you notice anything?
Nothing really jumped out, to be honest. I mean, it looks like the biggest changes have been changing the colors.
Right.
They've gone for warmer colors, which is a good idea because some of those folks in the original version, it looked like the only thing that wasn't available on the Enterprise was a tanning bed. There's just some pretty pale,
yeah,
pale, pasty looking people, and so you have like bland colors for the set, rather bland colors for the costumes, and then you have these sort of pasty looking people. It's not a visually attractive, but there might be a few little tweaks to the special effects here and there, but I would have to I know I see a lot of videos on YouTube comparing the original director's cut with the 4K version, and I see certain changes, like they changed that meteor or asteroid that's in the center of the wormhole, the explosion when that's hit, that's been changed.
Okay.
And it looks like they've put some new stuff in V'ger. I don't know it's kind of hard to describe what V'ger is because I still don't really know. But parts of it look like they've been replaced. But other than that, no, I didn't see any major changes. I will admit, when I first sat down to watch it, it did seem to move a little more quickly. So maybe they found ways to trim it down and make it a little sharper, with the editing.
Yeah. Now, when I was watching it, I'd sent you a screen capture of McCoy and Shatner standing in front of the window, and it looked like the lens was covered in Vaseline, and I couldn't figure out what was going on with that scene.
And it's worse in the 4K version.
Right, yeah.
I went back specifically to check that scene. What you're talking about is a scene where Spock has been called in. He's aboard the ship. He's been called in to sit and talk with Kirk and McCoy. This is the scene where Kirk practically has to order Spock to take a seat. And I don't blame Mr. Spock for not sitting because those chairs are very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
The situation is that you got a wide shot of that room, that conference room, or whatever it's supposed to be, briefing room, whatever. And there are 2 or 3 giant windows with a star field behind it. I assume when they did the movie originally, that was a blue screen, because I think back then they used blue screen.
Blue screens, yeah, probably, yeah.
But they superimposed that into the star field into the shots after in post. And it looks to me what the problem was, Shatner and DeForest Kelley are not in sharp focus. So they couldn't get a clean matte line around them.
Yeah. So they soften the
Try to
edges.
soften it, or in the process of trying to get rid of the bleed, because sometimes you have like light will reflect on the model or the person,
Right.
and,
Yeah.
and you'll get a little blue, in their face or in their head or in the hair,
And the hair. Yeah.
and then that disappears. So maybe they thought, well, we'll put that out of focus so it'll be more solid and we won't get that bleed. I don't know. But anyway, Shatner just looks a little out of focus. McCoy looks like he's just been smeared.
Yeah.
He looks like he's still in the wormhole.
Yeah.
Lay that on him.
Yeah, I told you they look like a cardboard cutout.
Yeah, that's the in the new version it's even worse.
Yeah, but that's the one. Yeah, the one I watched. It was just like I couldn't figure out what's going on.
Do you remember that story a couple of years back? It was a very famous thing. A woman somewhere in Italy or Spain, I think, she decided she was going to restore this medieval painting of the Virgin Mary, and she just sort of
yeah,
like a crayon drawing.
Yeah.
That's what McCoy looks like, and it's just sort of it's weird. And I don't know if it's possible that they could have fixed that, because I'm not sure if they're going with the original elements. I think they may just be going with
the
film itself, the finished film with everything in place. I'm not sure about that, but when they did the high definition version of Star Trek: The Next Generation, we're going to put that out on a Blu-ray, I guess, and they're also going to offer it on streaming, and they are. But they had to go back and they had to do all the compositing work over again, because they had shot the models for all the episodes on film, but they had composited everything in video in standard definition.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't hold up if you just took those episodes and you put them up to HD. They would look terrible. So they had to go back and redo the compositing of all the elements in the backgrounds for every episode. And they did that also. The original series, they actually replaced the original models with CGI.
Oh yeah, the first time I'd seen it that's what I watched was and at the time I didn't know that they had done that. I was like, that's really good special effects for 60s.
But I don't know if they had the ability to do that with this. I don't know if they had all the elements, or if they had a budget that would allow them to go through all that stuff and to do all the compositing digitally.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it's pretty obvious that they haven't done it, because you can still see like black lines around some of the ships.
Yeah. Now I noticed in a lot of the scenes, whenever you have a foreground actor, background actor, they do that split.
Oh yes.
Split lens. What's it called?
A split diopter.
Yeah. So I didn't know if maybe that scene was shot that way, and that's, what I'm saying, because it kind of had that same middle ground blurriness.
It's very bad in this. It really is. Robert Wise was a big fan of the split diopter, because he was doing a lot of very widescreen movies. He did the Sand Pebbles, the Steve McQueen movie sometime in the 60s. And you watch that movie and the image just, you feel like you're across the street from the action.
Yeah.
It's just everything's way back. But when he would go in for close-ups, he would always use that split diopter lens, because you could have a sharp close-up of a person in the foreground, and you could also have somebody sharp in the background, but it couldn't be directly behind, because the line was here, right? Everything behind the person who's in focus is going to be completely out of focus.
Right.
And everything past the line is going to be on this side is going to be in sharp focus. So you get that very ugly look.
Yeah.
It works when you have a neutral background, but when you have detailed backgrounds of things like computer consoles and chairs and other people, the fact that it's so completely out of focus, when right across on the other side of the screen, people who are standing that far away from the lens, the same distance, they're in sharp focus. So it looks ugly, and it was a stupid thing to do.
In this movie, the way it looks, the only it kept making me think, the only time you could really use this effectively in a movie is you have two people that you're describing that are in two different time frames, right? this person
Right.
here is in the future, and they're talking about this person in the past, and they set it up that way, or you
So
know,
use it as a device in
yeah, some kind
storytelling.
of love
Yeah.
interest. The guy's traveling to go see the woman, and you're showing them both at the same time what they're doing. But
Well,
two people on the same ship, like standing right behind each other, it doesn't work.
yeah, no,
It
and I
doesn't
guess
give it doesn't give any kind of effect to the look, or and, I'm not sitting there going,
it
"Wow,
just
that's
looks like a
amazing."
mistake. It looks
Yeah,
like you're thinking this is a 40, $50 million movie. And
yeah,
look at that. It's all out of focus. You know,
yeah.
uh, Robert Wise worked as an editor with Orson Welles on Citizen Kane. Back when they did those movies, uh, the idea of deep focus was considered the right way to shoot a movie.
Yeah.
You wanted to have everything in focus, but it had to be like 3 feet from the camera and beyond. You couldn't do the sort of massive close-ups. I mean, you could do them, but you couldn't do a massive close-up that also had other stuff
In focus.
in focus in the background.
Yeah.
So they came up with that idea of the split diopter lens, so you could have those sort of massive close-ups in one part of the picture, and the rest of the part of the picture would still be in focus. But it's by the time they did Star Trek: The Motion Picture, I assume that wasn't necessary. I assume that they must have had other ways of doing things, because Star Trek II, which just came out a few years later, they have shots, just scenes on the Enterprise, and everybody's in focus.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
I just imagine maybe you do it with two strips of film. You know what I'm saying?
well, it almost
Maybe
looks
something like
like
that.
that,
Yeah.
but it is the result of having a lens that's actually two lenses that
Two
have been cut
lenses, yeah.
together, and it's a very ugly look.
Yeah, that
I
middle,
don't.
just that middle ground of just a blur, that's what ruins it.
Yeah, and I don't know if bringing it up to 4K, I don't know if that necessarily makes it better.
No.
It might make it worse in some respects. I mean, it's the sort of thing, if you're looking at it in standard definition, you probably wouldn't even notice it that much. But you're looking at it on a big screen, like I have a fairly large TV, and it just looks like an eyesore.
I can't remember if I noticed it before. I mean, I guess maybe I didn't, because now it's a problem. So I'm assuming it wasn't as noticeable on the previous versions, or watching on a smaller screen, or
Well, another funny thing is Robert Wise claimed that he wanted this movie to be like similar in style to 2001: A Space Odyssey.
yeah.
Now, I think he was mistaken to take that approach. But if you're going to take that approach, you say to yourself, well, I saw 2001. It came out in 1968, right? And I consider Kubrick to be the master. And he didn't use a split diopter lens,
Right.
as far as I could tell. If he did use it, he used it a lot better. So why not be true to your word? If you're going to imitate Kubrick, pay attention. He's not using those fucking lenses.
Right, yeah.
And, with a movie that's this expensive, that has this much anticipation from the audience, that people just thinking that this is going to be the best fucking thing that will ever happen. And they go to see the movie and they're thinking they couldn't even get the picture in focus.
Yeah.
That's not the reaction that you want. And the amazing thing is, right from the second movie, suddenly everything falls into place.
Right, yeah.
It's just like the difference between night and day. And I don't want to praise Wrath of Khan too much, because I don't want people to, sometimes when you overpraise something, there's people out there that, their reaction is to try to tear it down. If people don't like Wrath of Khan, maybe there are reasons not to. It probably has its flaws too.
Yeah.
But it was made for a fraction of the budget of the first film, and it actually is a thrilling film. It's exciting and suspenseful and entertaining and moving.
Oh, yeah.
And it is kind of campy and corny in some parts. Some of the things seem a little, corny, I guess is the best word.
That's what you want, though. You want a fun Star Trek. You don't want doom and gloom.
Right. And let's be honest, there's plenty of corny shit in the motion picture as well.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, all that nonsense about the Deltans are supposed to be so sexually attractive that as soon as somebody in Uhura says, "Oh, she's a Deltan," and they all go,
Yeah.
that's well, it's Gene Roddenberry, of course,
Yeah.
the Mr. Sachs, the Hugh Hefner of Star Trek, the great bird of the universe has a different meaning. So she comes on, and the first thing she has to tell everybody, I guess, to avoid being jumped on, is that she's taken a vow of celibacy. That's all stupid shit.
Yeah.
And why is the woman that comes from a race of people that are supposedly so fucking sexy, why is she bald? Why is she bald anyway? Even forgetting about the fact that she's described as being this super sexual entity that all the Delta 4 people are supposed to be. Why is she bald? I mean, just when you were thinking about this movie, why would they say, let's get a really beautiful woman and shave her head off?
Shave her head, yeah. And she also, the actress wanted to, she wanted her hair insured in case it didn't grow back.
No, I don't blame her.
Yeah.
But it just seems like, yeah, I mean, I can't figure that out. I don't know. Remember we were talking on the Rosemary's Baby episode about the importance of that scene where Rosemary comes back and she's had her hair done.
Haircut, yeah.
And we got into a discussion of how sometimes, like in the aftermath of the Second World War, the French would shame women that had supposedly collaborated with the Nazis by publicly shaving their heads. So usually for a woman, and I guess we need only ask Will Smith this, women's hair is a very touchy thing, and it has to mean something that you decide that you're going to take the person who you identify as being the sexy one on this, irresistibly sexy, and she has a shaved head. I don't understand it, but I mean, it's a nice look.
Oh, yeah.
But then I thought Will Smith's wife looked pretty good too. You know?
Yeah.
So what do I know? I guess you never can tell about these things when people's sexual tastes become involved. You know, I mean, the other silly thing is Vija, which is this comes from a world of robots or technology, you know, computers, whatever. It snatches Ilya off the deck, right? Doesn't take any of the other people. It
Right.
picks the sexy one. And then it returns her. And the first thing she has to do is take a shower.
All right, yeah.
She's essentially a robot. And I know that they say something about it. She's taking a sonic shower. I don't know if that's in the dialogue or if that's just something that is included in the liner notes.
Yeah.
But then when the shower ends, and I guess these are some of the suggestive scenes that somehow managed to get this up to a PG, which they wanted. Before she steps out of the shower, Kirk presses a button, and she's suddenly wearing something that you would probably, if you had a desire to buy something like that for your wife or your girlfriend, you'd have to go to one of these little shops on 42nd Street, if there are any still. And she's wearing like glass heel stiletto shoes, and she's got a mini skirt that really isn't even a skirt. It looks like a shirt.
Yeah.
And she remains standing throughout the movie, as far as I can remember. So she never has like a Sharon Stone incident.
Right. Yeah.
But it's still silly choices, you know. I mean, why don't we treat, if the whole point of this movie is to show the humanity of people and to show how all these different types of folks, including aliens, how they share that humanity, right? That they're all important people, they're significant, their lives mean something. And yet the female character, you got to dress her up in a sort of silly costume.
Yeah.
And you have to have that business about sex. You know, in the first episode, the first pilot, Nurse Chapel, Margelle Barrett, she actually played the part of the number 2 on the ship, the second in command.
Yeah.
And the preview audiences, or the folks that did the sort of screenings of these things, the audience responded badly to her. But the gimmick was some of the opening dialogue when that character is being introduced is similar to some of the dialogue you hear in movies like Rocket Ship XM and some of the other space adventure movies that came before it, which is they'll have a female character, but when they talk about her, they're talking about how cold she is, or do you think we have a chance with her?
Yeah.
And that really isn't, by 1979, you think they would know better, right? Let's have a female character who's a central character in the story and not immediately talk about whether or not she's good in bed.
Yeah.
But they just, I guess with Mr. Roddenberry involved, they just couldn't resist. That seemed to be one of his great handicaps, is that he had this pressing need to explore sexuality
Right.
in his movies. The one feature film that he did after Star Trek was Pretty Girls All in a Row. I don't know if you ever heard of this one.
I don't think so.
Rock Hudson plays a college, university professor who's sleeping with all the co-eds and may also be a serial killer. But the important thing is he's sleeping with all the co-eds.
Yeah.
And when you look at things like the two pilots that Roddenberry did for TV, the two science fiction pilots that he did after Star Trek, I think one is called Planet Earth, if I'm not mistaken, or Genesis 2, or I forget what the titles were for them. Anyway, it's the same sort of thing, right? So I think in one of them, actually, the one with John Saxon, it's all about a future society where the women are in control. So you can imagine all the stuff that goes on there, right? That all looks terribly tedious. Gene Roddenberry did seem to buy into that sort of Hugh Hefner philosophy. I don't dislike Hugh Hefner. I think he was an important figure in his time. But the philosophy, the idea of saying, let's all be sexually liberated. Let's stop being obsessed with a fear or guilt about sex.
Right.
But it's a natural thing. We should all, be willing to admit that, and let's be adult about this, right? But unfortunately, what it sort of translated into is I'm in favor of sexual liberation for women so that they will be liberated to have sex with me.
Yeah.
So right around that time in the late 60s and throughout the 70s, you see a lot of movies about middle-aged men, sometimes played by people like William Holden, having affairs with like 17-year-old girls. This wouldn't fly today, of course.
No.
But there was just that notion that somehow this is such a extraordinary thing for these middle-aged guys that suddenly they've woken up in a world where they can actually have a 17-year-old girl, find some hippie girl hitchhiking, and it's almost assumed that she'll be.
Wasn't Lolita? Wasn't that one of the big movies around that same time?
Well, Lolita was about a guy that's actually going for like a 12-year-old.
Oh,
so
yeah,
it's a little different.
Yeah.
But that period in the 60s when there was a lot of talk about free love, it did seem to sort of translate itself into we can get any girl we want. Right?
Yeah.
And in Star Trek, even in the original series, you see, Kirk almost became notorious for sleeping his way through the galaxy. Right? Every week he had a new girl, and the girls, the women on the show, were always dressed in what looked like very skimpy bikinis.
Yeah.
There were some episodes where I gather they had some problems with the standards and practices people because of the amount of flesh that they were showing.
Yeah, I remember the episode about the android Andrea, where she basically just had a V,
A V,
was
right?
covering
Yes,
the breast, and I was like, can't imagine. I don't know how they even made it on TV.
Well, that is one of the advantages of science fiction, is that you can just say, well, these are aliens, you know. So yeah, they went as far as they possibly could with that, and they probably were, even I Dream of Jeannie didn't show a belly button, I guess, in the first couple of seasons.
Yeah.
But on Star Trek, it seemed like anything went. But if you had a director who was willing to sort of stand up against that, then you probably wouldn't have that sort of leaking through into this movie.
Right.
And it isn't really a tremendous problem, but in a sense, you could say the whole movie is kind of like a dirty joke, right? V'ger wants to meet its creator, and when it finally does, it wants to fuck.
Yeah.
And Decker, who seems like this horny guy, is I want this more than anything.
Yeah.
And of course, one of the problems with Star Trek, and it was always true, and it's true even to this day, is when the characters are talking about something where the technology or the science hasn't really been nailed down, they sort of just make statements, right? I mean, he doesn't even know what it means.
What it means, yeah.
What does that mean?
He didn't even know that what any of this was before they got there.
Right. I mean, the woman that he knew has been killed and replaced by this technology, by this creature. And now he's saying he wants to join with it without even knowing what that means exactly.
Yeah.
And of course, they have that very silly thing where he's having such a good time, his hair is flying up.
Yeah.
She doesn't have any hair to fly, so he's the only one. His hair is literally standing on end. And when I see that, I think to myself, didn't anybody say, people are going to take this the wrong way, Robert?
Yeah.
This is going to look silly. The guy is essentially having sex and his hair is looks like something out of a Three Stooges short.
Yeah.
Those are the things that kind of, I guess it's another example of a sort of runaway production.
Right.
Nobody was in charge really. And it's nice that they've tried to impose some sort of order on this film now. And to be honest with you, in watching the original little bits of the original version this afternoon, I can see that the original version was not really that awful,
Right. Yeah.
it had some semblance of a movie and a story, but expectations were so high that couldn't help but disappoint, especially when we had just had Star Wars a few years earlier.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people will say, well, Star Wars really wasn't hard science fiction, so that shouldn't be used as a template for this film. But I would say Star Trek was not hard science fiction either. Star Trek was space adventure.
Yeah.
The original proposal that Roddenberry made to the networks was its wagon train to the stars. Now, I know he intended to be a little more ambitious with the themes that he was going to deal with on the show, but still the idea was you have to compensate for those moments where you have Captain Kirk giving a speech. You have to compensate for that by having a scene where he's kicking ass once in a while, right? And he did plenty. I guess every episode had him fighting with people, right?
Or his stunt double.
Well, I think Shatner actually handled some of that stuff himself, and he wasn't so bad at it. I guess he was still in decent shape at that time. But that's the price you have to pay if you're going to speechify one moment.
Yeah.
You have to give people something colorful and exciting to watch the next moment. That's the problem with this movie, is that there was no opportunity for action. What could they do? What could you do?
I was going to say the having no fun antagonists is what hurt this movie. We needed like a Khan or a Harry Mudd.
Right? Yeah, you don't really have an antagonist at all.
No, I like the idea of the Voyager spacecraft because it kind of it's connecting the past with the future without doing a time travel movie.
Right.
But but still, just the whole Voyager thing, and
well, it's connecting.
It reminded me of they repeated this again in the Voyage Home with the
whales.
Yeah. Something shows up to Earth, it's going to destroy us unless it can talk to, and we don't know who. We don't know who it wants. It's just some signal. We got to figure it out, and that's it was almost the same exact thing.
So with the Voyage Home, they were almost saying you could take that idea and do it right.
Yeah, make it work.
Show how that could be an enjoyable story.
Make it fun.
But the plot of this, and this was something they knew even at the time, the plot of this was basically the plot of the Changeling episode.
Yeah.
Where Kirk has that little floating robot that he has to deal with that gets beamed aboard, and it has the same business about it's looking for its starting point or its creator or something, and it's going to neutralize or sterilize everything it finds. And they eventually realized that it was a space probe that sent out from Earth that was supposed to sterilize soil samples, not sterilize living beings. So they basically took the one idea in the movie is taken from one of the episodes of the TV show. Now, I guess you could say, well, they did that with Wrath of Khan as well. They took an idea from the movie,
Yeah.
from the TV show, and they brought it into the movie. But they did it in an exciting way.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have it here. I had the advertisement that was run in Variety. The studios used to run in daily Variety and weekly Variety. They used to run these expensive fold-out color advertisements for the upcoming movies.
Mm-hmm.
And the Wrath of Khan is just this beautiful thing with all explosions and spaceships and people fighting, and you could see that what they were saying is, this one is going to be better than the last one. Please forget that one.
Yeah.
And it sure was. I mean, whatever quibbles people might have, it was just more fun to watch.
Oh yeah, I love it. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's a very entertaining film. And yes, Jerry Goldsmith did a terrific job on the music, but I love the music for Wrath of Khan as well.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm not a musician, so I can't speak about the technical aspects of it, but it's just a thrilling, soaring kind of piece of music. Just makes you you can't help but get caught up in the movie when you hear that music.
Yeah.
So and that's true.
And with the ending of this one, it was just like, okay, we find out who the creator was. Decker's gonna make love to it, and we're gonna leave. And it was like, okay, well, what'd you get out of it?
Yeah,
nothing.
Really
There was no. Yeah, there was no. I guess maybe Kirk learned a lesson, but
yeah, I mean, even the business with Spock, you could say that perhaps the one real instance of character development or significant character change is what happens to Spock. He starts off, he wants to achieve whatever level he's shooting for in the Colin or some sort of discipline. And before he gets the medal that makes him whatever best in show or whatever, he says, no, I can't take that because I got some unresolved things. Some of the dialogue suggests, or some of the subtitles suggest that he's sensing Fiji.
Yeah, I kept thinking he's got the Force in this one. he's sensing, thousand voices just cried out. Right. That's what I kept waiting for him to say.
So that's kind of a nice touch. That shows some sign that the people that were writing this had some skill, right? They're sort of putting that out there that he has to be involved in this because he's getting the signals that something's wrong, and it causes him to leave the thing that he wants to do, the life he wants to live. He's leaving that to go and address this other bigger problem because he sensed that this entity might have feelings similar to the feelings that he has.
Yeah.
So he goes and he mind melds eventually with it, and he comes away when he's sitting in the sick bay or laying in the sick bay later. I think that's the first time we ever see Mr. Spock's feet that I can remember.
Maybe.
And he's wearing a very cute little hoodie. I don't know why the hoodies in sickbay would have fluorescent orange lining. But anyway, it's nice to see a little color in the scene. But then he basically tells you what his situation is, and we get some idea of what sort of path he's on, what sort of progress he's making. And then eventually on the bridge, at one point he starts to cry because he's feeling, he recognizes Feger's plight. He's a sympathetic spirit. And then at the end of the movie, when Scotty offers to drive him back to Vulcan, he says, no, I'm all done there. That won't be necessary. So there you can see there's a progress, right? They gave us something, with that character.
Yeah.
But Kirk, if he did learn anything, really not much. Don't be such a dick, right?
Yeah.
That's about the only lesson that he really got. Decker, I guess, there's no character there to speak of, right? So there's no opportunity really to learn anything. I guess he liked this girl so much that even when she had been replaced with an android replica, he still wanted to go to bed with her, so to speak. And the other characters,
pretty much non-existent.
Right, you could
Chekhov, Sulu. I mean, Scotty.
Chekhov, the only one who has a worse toupee than
Yeah.
than Captain Kirk. Yeah, they're all a lot of their scenes have come and gone in the various versions because they're
Right.
really not necessary to the plot. I also dislike this sort of overly moist, sentimental attitude that everybody on the Enterprise has in this one.
Yeah.
And I like that they got away from that in the second one. Right from the second one, this is a military operation. People don't behave that way.
Yeah.
And somebody comes on the bridge, no matter how much you like them, you don't shout their name and throw your arms around them. That's something, even like, for instance, when Chekhov has this, what appears to be a fairly minor injury.
It burned his arm, or
Right.
his hand, yeah.
Nurse Chapel is called to the bridge, and Uhura jumps up just to give Nichelle Nichols a couple of lines. Oh, he's over there.
Yeah.
Hey, Cameron, over there. As if she would see the guy that's laying on the floor, right?
Screaming, yeah.
As soon as she points Chekhov out to her, nurse/Dr. Chapel, she puts this face on him. Woo-hoo! I don't know if she just doesn't like Chekhov, or she was so appalled by this horrible injury.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. If that's your doctor's reaction, get another doctor.
Get it, yeah.
If you show your doctor your burn and he goes, ah, that's not a guy that you want, or a gal you want. But they seem to feel that every opportunity to juice up the role for these poor supporting people that are going to be a major part of the story. That was something they couldn't, not do. They had to jump in every time. And the other thing that bothers me is this was the movie where they tried to pay back all the fans by giving them little roles in the film.
Yeah.
And boy, can you tell. I assume that woman who Kirk has a little dialogue with when they're waiting for Dr. McCoy to beam up, I assume from her delivery that she was not a professional actress. And that hurts these types of movies. That sort of dialogue should be thrown off. It shouldn't be, go in for a close-up. That's trivial stuff. You should be just, sort of seeing that out of the corner of our eye. We should be, and the delivery of all bad actors or non-actors always sounds the same. It's like sort of universal language of bad acting.
Yeah.
And that ridiculous scene in the giant conference room where they have all these people, and they wisely put all the folks that are wearing the Halloween masks way in the back.
Yeah.
But it's like, they're saying, oh, we got this horrible thing, and let's take a look on the big screen, and everybody's going, oh. That's not the way you could expect professional people in a military operation to be behaving.
Right.
And you also, the folks that, including that guy who was supposed to be in the original TV series, who got downgraded to that brief scene, we see him on the monitor, say, it's over 6,000, whatever long, it goes on forever. It's incredible. What power. Not the way professional people in that sort of situation behave, I mean, listen sometime, they have them on YouTube, listen to the communications between Mission Control and Apollo 13.
Right.
These guys are almost dead. Right? They're that close to being dead, lost in the vastness of space. And they sound cool as a cucumber. And they sound professional as can be. That's what you would expect from astronauts.
Yeah.
Right? These people are highly trained. They're not going to wet their panties just because somebody says there's something out there that's killing people. That's what they're there for, right? That's why they're being called into service. So I don't care for that, and I suppose there's nothing that could really be done in editing the latest version to fix that,
Probably not.
But if you were doing a movie that really was a full-blooded melodrama where everybody was, chewing the scenery, then that wouldn't matter so much. It wouldn't stand out so much. But when Shatner, who we usually can rely on for giving a sort of
Overacting, yeah.
when he is like a stick doing nothing, and the most active part of him is the costume changes and the toupee moving around. Then all of those folks that are delivering the dialogue, little dialogue that they have, delivering
Yeah.
it poorly, that really stands out. And it's it
Yeah,
doesn't work.
they probably should have just offered those people walk-on roles. Walk to the
Yeah,
scene and that's it. No,
right.
no dialogue.
Right, walk through the corridor. That's plenty of shots like that. You could stick people in there.
Yeah.
But apparently they had some idea that this was necessary when you do a big movie version of Star Trek, that you have to show all the people that you normally didn't see on the TV series.
Yeah.
But I never felt that except maybe in the third season when they really cut the budget of the show, I never got the impression that the Enterprise was empty. They
No.
had enough extras moving around so that it felt like it was fully populated. I guess you could say that one of the smart things they did with the subsequent films is they got rid of all those people. Right?
Right, yeah.
The Enterprise, by the time they do Star Trek 3, the Enterprise is just a skeleton crew.
Right.
So it makes you wonder why they have all those people in the first place. Right?
Yeah, I guess they only built the sets for the main deck of the Enterprise and then that little conference room. I didn't see there was no turbo lift scenes. There was no walking down the hallway scenes or anything like that.
Well, I think there's one brief scene where Kirk is walking down the corridor and there's this guy walking his little electronic doggy.
Oh yeah, when he first shows up,
right,
when he goes down to get Decker from the I guess the engine room. Okay, yeah.
So you got the engine room with all sorts of colored lights flashing, which is
just stuff you forget about, I guess.
Those weren't consequential. And the corridor scene was just another instance of them trying to hammer home the idea that Kirk doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
Because he has to ask for directions.
Yeah, he doesn't know where he's going, yeah.
Yeah, that's not, I don't think that's what people really were coming to see that movie for. I think the audience would have been perfectly happy if you just started with them all in place, all doing the job because this is the way we're seeing them. You leave the movie, you go home and you turn on Star Trek. There they all are.
I don't understand why this just didn't pick up right after that last episode.
Yeah.
They're just gone on to their next adventure from that episode.
They might have said that, they have to explain why the ship is different and why the costumes are different and things like that there's been a passage of time. But that it doesn't really explain any of that. Right? No. Things are different just because it's a movie and they have a director that wanted things to be different.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to believe that the Federation suddenly decided that everybody has to have different uniforms. And it's very hard to believe that the Klingons, within the space of 4 or 5 years, suddenly sprouted all these armadillo things on their heads.
Yeah, so nothing changed for 3 years, and then within the span of 4 years, everything changed.
Everything changed, right? Yeah, it's not necessary. The audience understands. The audience knows that they're seeing a movie representation, new version of this story.
Right.
And as long as you have the original characters, they're going to be fine with it, as long as it's good.
Yeah.
And the proof of that is when they did Star Trek 2, it was a great success. And when they did Star Trek 4, it was the biggest hit that they've had. I think it's still one of the top grossing films. It certainly was the top grossing of the original series of films. So yeah, you don't need that. That's like people who get, they say, we killed Godzilla in the last movie. How are we going to explain bringing it? But nobody gives a fuck.
Yeah.
Nobody's paying that close of attention to those details. We just want to see these things on the screen, things that we like. And we're hoping that you have something you're going to be doing with these characters that's going to justify our confidence when we buy a ticket, right? You're sort of saying, we came up with an idea. We have a new adventure we want to tell. And in this case, they didn't really.
No.
Which is sad, because with $50 million, you probably, if you had a story, it really could have been something fantastic. But I think that the big problem is Robert Wise was trying to make a different type of film.
He was trying to make 2001.
Right. Star Trek is closer to Flash Gordon, right? Or Forbidden Planet. Forbidden Planet is probably the perfect template for a Star Trek movie because it basically is Star Trek. I don't know if Gene Roddenberry has ever addressed this before he died, but yeah, you know, are you familiar with Forbidden Planet?
Yeah.
Forbidden Planet is essentially Star Trek. All the characters are essentially the same. The funny thing is when Cine Fantastique, which was the big magazine for science fiction, fantasy, and horror films back during that time in the 70s, they were planning to do a big double issue exploration of the making of Star Trek the Motion Picture. Apparently, the picture was delayed so many times that and the person who was doing this in-depth article had so much difficulty in trying to get details about the story, you know, how the film was made, that ended up never being published in the magazine, but it actually has now been published as a book. So people can find that. I'll try to include the details in our notes for this episode.
All right.
But that's a whole book that was written about what went wrong while they were making the movie, speaking with the actors and the director and all the folks that were involved. There's another book that was written by Gene Roddenberry. I think it's available on Amazon. Old copies of it are available on Amazon. I don't think it's on the Internet Archive, but that's a writer for Starlog working with Gene Roddenberry to tell his version of events. I have a feeling that probably isn't the most reliable version.
Right.
But anyway, by coincidence, when Cine Fantastique did their special double issue all about the making of Forbidden Planet, which is a wonderful movie from the 50s, and just by
Leslie Nielsen's in that, right?
Leslie Nielsen, yes.
Okay.
That was pre-comedy.
Yeah.
But in the same issue, they actually do end up having an article, a much briefer article about the making of Star Trek: The Motion Picture. And when they eventually reviewed the film, one of their later issues, which I think I might have here, the review ended up in the issue that they devoted to the black hole. So a special double issue all about the making of the special effects of the black hole, which came out the same year as
Same year, yeah.
and stunk almost as bad.
Oh yeah.
I remember that was a very depressing time for me.
I don't think anybody talks about that movie anymore.
Well, it's very hard to say anything nice about it other than the visuals.
Yeah.
Special effects, the visuals, very nice. But coincidentally, in the same issue that they did their
they used to force us to watch it in elementary school. I remember that.
Black Hole?
Yeah.
Well, that's another movie that had this misunderstanding about 2001.
Yeah.
Trying to mix Star Wars type space adventure with a little bit of Star Trek and an ending that's 2001. It doesn't work.
Right.
But just by coincidence, they ended up reviewing Star Trek: The Motion Picture in their Black Hole issue. And the headline on the review, this is by Kay Anderson, saying things are deep, mystical, and profound does not make them so. And the sad truth is the emperor is stark naked. And I think Colin Ellison did a review of the film for Starlog, or he might have done it for this, or he may have done it in one of his interviews with one of the other publications. And he's the guy that wrote City on the Edge of Forever.
Yeah.
Which he more or less disowned because he said they had changed it so much. He was a bit of a dick, Colin Ellison. He died a few years ago. There's a lot of things that you could say about him that aren't very nice.
Yeah, I remember he had his own, back whenever Sci-Fi Channel first launched, he had his own talk show on there. I remember watching it all the time.
Right, yeah. Well, he was a very talented and intelligent guy, and for a while I was a great hero of his. He was a great hero of mine.
Okay.
And I remember going to another convention, Phil Seuling's comic book conventions, back around the same time they had Star Trek conventions. They started to have comic book conventions. And I remember signing on as a security at that convention, just so that I would have an opportunity to see Colin Ellison, because he was going to be speaking there. And I got an autographed copy of a book that he had written. And I had a strange interaction with him. I was waiting online, and I gave him, you get to the front of the line, you hand the person the book that they're supposed to sign, and they sign it. He looks up at me and he says, "Smile for Christ's sake." So I guess it was about a month or so later, I was coming back from a meeting at the School of Visual Arts. They were interviewing students, people that were applying. And I had my interview, and I got the impression that they were going to accept me. So afterwards, I was walking along Park Avenue, and I was going to walk all the way up to 59th Street from 23rd Street, where the School of Visual Arts was. As I'm passing by this, what might have been a hotel, and Harlan Ellison comes out of the building, and he passes right by me. And then as he's passing, he looks at me like this. Now, I don't know if he recognized me from the line, or more likely, he was just assuming that I was one of those fanboys that was probably going to say something to him.
So, yeah.
So he's waiting to hear what sort of idiotic statement I was going to make. Anyway, I disappointed him. I didn't say anything.
Right.
I think if I had said something, I would have commented on the fluorescent purple bowling jacket that he was wearing.
Yeah.
Because he was a rather flamboyant dresser.
Yeah.
Anyway, he not really a nice person, and he got a lot of black marks against him as far as I can see from what I've read about him. But he's dead now. So anyway, he wrote a review of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and even though he had some bad blood between him and Roddenberry, and anger about how he felt the script had been treated, he reviewed the film fairly, and one of the things he pointed out was that all the young folks coming out of the theater after seeing the motion picture, they were all saying, "Yeah, it was pretty good," but it was nothing like the sort of reaction they had when they're coming out of Star Wars. That was sort of the surest way to see that franchise in that early stage was in real trouble.
Yeah.
So they really needed somebody to come along, to put a little life into this thing and to make it work. And also the cast was saying similar things. The cast was concerned about the script, saying they weren't seeing the characters there, and they were hoping that would be fixed. And so a lot of, very troubling signs even before the film was released. But I guess it did just well enough so that they were willing to go ahead and do a sequel. But apparently, Paramount sought out Harv Bennett, TV producer, and their main concern was, can you make it better and can you make it cheaper? And he said he could, and that's how he got the job. And he's kind of an unsung hero, I think. I used to have a copy of the Star Trek II script that he contributed to. He might have written the original script, and then it was passed along to other people to, I think the director contributed to the script as well, and they came up with different ideas. Like the Genesis project was an idea that somebody else, might have even been the special effects people that came up with that. But that was the sink or swim moment, more so than the first film. The first film proved that there was an audience because people did turn out for the movie, but the second film had to prove that it could actually be a good movie, an entertaining movie. So I'm happy that people are enjoying this new version of the original film, but I don't know if it really is that big of an improvement.
No.
Still essentially the same movie, and it still has many of the same flaws that the original film had. So.
Yeah, I definitely don't. I don't like publicly defend this movie. I just kind of enjoy it in private.
It's a guilty pleasure.
Yeah, and I'm not like a, like I said, because I never watched the show growing and everything. So I'm not like I mean, I enjoy the show, I enjoy the movies, but so I'm not like a purist. You know what I'm saying? But I would say that J.J. Abrams got it right when he done his first. That's what this should have been. The fun of the, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not saying that's like the perfect. I'm just saying that's what this movie should have been.
He had an understanding of how to make a really entertaining, blockbuster movie.
Yeah.
And the problem, I guess, with Robert Wise is he's thinking I want to do something artistic and profound, but he's working with material that is space opera. It's pulp material. And you can't do both. You can't, the requirements of an action adventure story are different from the requirements of something like 2001. With 2001, Stanley Kubrick was intentionally trying to frustrate audience expectations. He wanted to do something that hadn't been seen before. And he was making a movie which really is just sort of like something that you're supposed to experience. It's supposed to wash over you. There are no human characters that are very clearly defined in 2001. And that's intentional. It's not like he didn't know how to create interesting characters on the screen. He wanted the human characters to be bland and neutral, because the story, the film, wasn't about soap opera details of these particular individuals. It was this sort of larger story about the creation of a species, right? A whole new race of beings. Whatever the star child is supposed to be at the end, the next step for human beings. So to be worrying about their sexual interests and things like that, that would have been wrong. But in a movie like this, relationships between the characters and some real drama or conflict, heroism, that's what was missing. There's no real heroism in this. I mean, where's the self-sacrifice? Is Decker's self-sacrifice supposed to be what's supposed to give us a lump in our throats? We're supposed to get choked up?
He's not a character. He's not enough of a character throughout the rest of the movie where you care at the end. You're just like, whatever.
And I have to admit, if I was advising that guy, I would see you being a terrible fool. You're a young man. You're already a captain of a starship. You have a long life, a career, great accomplishments ahead of you, and you're gonna throw that all away just so that you can become sparkly stuff. And you don't even know what happens afterwards.
Right.
Where are you going to go afterwards? You're going to lose your life just to put on a light show? That's ridiculous. It's stupid. There's no way to get moved or emotionally involved in that, But well, that's what we were stuck with, I guess. Just wanted to see. I wish somebody had shaved William Shatner's arms. I don't mean this part. I mean this part. He's got like half a pound of hair hanging off his arms. That doesn't look very good. Spock's ears, apparently, there's a story there. Apparently, when they started shooting, they left the night watchman in charge of turning off the oven. And I guess he forgot. So the next day, all of Spock's ears that they were preparing, they were making foam rubber ears, and they have to be baked in an oven. They didn't have any, so they actually used remnants of the Spock ears from the original series that somebody had saved. But if you look very carefully, you can see his ears changing.
Right. Yeah.
During the course of the movie, and they don't look to me like the old ears. There's something wrong with them. I don't know what it is, but anyway, it's something to be looked at. When you see the movie in 4K, you see a lot of the sort of mascara and stuff that they put around his eyes, which doesn't look that great. The back of the headrests on the captain's chair and on the other chairs on the bridge have what appear to be bolts in them. I don't know why that would be.
Yeah, well, I noticed too that I guess the headrest is motorized, raises up and down.
Well, that's cool, I guess.
Yeah.
But why would they still be using
I don't know.
bolts? That seems silly. We talked about the split diopter shots. Oh yes, all the spacesuits, all the scenes of people in spacesuits are shot in a very odd way. Whenever we see full figure, they appear to be models, miniature people in spacesuits. And when we see Kirk and Spock go out of the ship, everything is done in close-up. And it looks to me like they simply superimposed or matted the actors' faces into the helmet. Because I can't understand why you would have that shot locked down. Right, why would you have a lockdown shot of the helmets if the person was really wearing them? There is one shot where clearly the actors are wearing them, but I have a feeling they only had like this much of the costume.
Yeah.
Because they shoot when he finally catches him, there's appears to be one person. It's probably not William Shatner in a spacesuit, and he grabs a Spock dummy, and then they cut to a close-up of the two of their faces in the helmets, and there they actually appear to be in the helmets. But all the other shots, they appear to be projected.
I was going to say maybe they were having the same problem that they had on the set of Alien, where their breath would fog up the.
Well,
maybe that's why
I would have thought that would have added
Yeah.
to give it a little believability.
Yeah.
But the rear projection, which might be another example of rear projection. That might be a big helmet that they projected the images of the faces into the back on the screen. And the reason I think that might be the case is because you see some of those shots when Kirk and Scotty are joyriding around the outside of the Enterprise in that little pod. And sometimes as the ship is passing, you can see they're in the windows. They're standing in the window, the big window at the front of the pod. And as it moves, they look flat. And that is what you get when you project the image inside the model. You project it onto a screen as the model is, well, actually it's the camera that's moving, but when the camera moves past the model, the perspective on the figures doesn't change because they're being projected on a flat surface. So there's a couple of instances there. You can also tell from the contrast. The projected image is always different darkness and brightness values than you would get in the rest of the picture because it's something that was shot at an earlier time. So it looks to me they did the same thing with the spacesuits. Why, I don't know. Is it possible that would have added so much to the budget to actually shoot them in the spacesuits outside? And, I guess they have to be in harnesses or something, hang them from the floor. Maybe the
actors, maybe the actors didn't want to put a full suit on.
Well, maybe not. There is Kirk footage of him getting into a spacesuit, I believe. I think that was some of the footage that they ended up using on the TV broadcast. Unfortunately, when they have this in this version, Kirk just sort of appears outside the Enterprise. Yeah. And in the TV version, they have a scene of the Enterprise, the saucer of the Enterprise is a little door that opens up, flying out. Unfortunately, they put him in a different spacesuit, so it doesn't match the other stuff later when he finally catches Spock. I guess because they decided not to use that footage. It wasn't supposed to be used, so it didn't matter that he was wearing a different uniform. Also, when he comes out of the Enterprise, unlike Spock, he's not wearing a thruster pack. Right. I'm trying to figure out what did he expect to be able to do without a thruster pack. How is he going to get all that distance into Beeger without any sort of propulsion? And he's just going to wait outside the Enterprise and hope that Mr. Spock
comes by. Yeah,
Beeger spits him out, and I'll be here to catch him. Doesn't make sense, really. You need some sort of propulsion. But why would Kirk be leaving the ship anyway? That's not the way Kirk does business. Right?
Yeah, you have all those military guys that could have easily suited up and went out there.
Right. Yeah. Anybody would do. Right. But I think part of the problem is Robert Wise was not a fan of the transporter. Transporter was basically a storytelling device. They didn't want to have to bother with landing ships every episode of the TV series, so they came up with the transporter. Transportation technology is ridiculous. It's never going to happen. And Dr. McCoy is right. Basically, the people who step into that beam are being destroyed.
And rebuilt, yeah.
Right, yeah. And they never really explain exactly how it works. They didn't really get around to doing that until the Next Generation. And the theory or the concept that they came up with is completely different from what is supposedly happening in the original series. The original series, you step on that platform and your molecules are taken apart and you're beamed down to the planet and reassembled. What they never explained is, why is it necessary to stand on the platform on the ship, but anybody can transport up or down on the planet?
You're right, yeah.
That doesn't really make sense. But I think he wasn't crazy about the idea of the transporter because he was making a $50 million movie. And these little storytelling tricks, these little expediencies that you would use in a TV series to save money and save time weren't really necessary in a movie, right? You could have a lot of stuff and it gives you something to do. Let's get people in space suits and send them out into space,
right,
and so forth. But it really limits you, because in the TV series, Kirk could be on the bridge 1 minute and be right in the heart of the action in the next minute. And here, everything's so laborious.
Yeah.
Takes, a quarter of the movie to just get from where they start to the heart of V'ger. And even when they get there, there's nothing there really. A lot of light, blue light, and wavy things. I don't even know what it's supposed to be.
I don't know. I know the opening to me looked like a rectum, but I don't know what they were going for there.
It did. That's I mean, and I keep referring to it as the orifice.
Yeah.
He's gonna probe the orifice.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is just, what can you say, right? God bless them. They were trying.
They tried. Yeah.
They tried.
Yes. At least they corrected course later on. So
yes, and they made considerable use of the transporters in later movies. But I just think he was a little embarrassed by Robert Wise. He didn't think that shouldn't be part of the story. That was, and the only time he really uses it, other than to bring the characters onto the ship, is to kill. The only time it's really important in the story is when it kills 2 crew members.
Yeah.
So see, my feeling is all this stuff should work without question.
Right. Yeah.
The only time it should not work is when it's part of the drama, part of the actual story. Right? I'll give you an example. In Star Trek V, Star Trek V is rightfully considered one of the worst.
Right.
And they have that silly business with Jimmy Doohan, Scotty, and Nichelle Nichols having an affair or something. She kisses him at some point. Anyway, there's a scene towards the end of the film where he's on his way to engineering or wherever, and he says some funny line, and then he hits his head on a beam and falls down.
Yeah.
And that's knocked out. You don't do that. That sort of accident that takes a character out of the story, that's not the way you tell these type of stories. If he gets knocked out, it's because of something that happened. The enemy did it, the villain did it, not because he's stupid enough to get hit.
Yeah.
Guy is supposed to know the ship better than anybody, and he gets hit in the head with the low-hanging beam. So that's, you have to make sure that everything that happens in the story is actually a part of the story, not just something. Because otherwise, what could, if you would, like Captain Kirk gets out of that little pod thing when he's in San Francisco at the beginning, and some other pod ship comes by and runs him over. And so, we got to get a new Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
People don't get hit by cars. They don't fall into holes. They don't get hit by meteorites or anything like that. That's not the story you're telling. You're telling a story that is about the consequences of space exploration. And if you want those things to have any meaning, it has to actually, that groundwork has to be laid for those things. So anyway, I don't know what were we talking about.
I'm not for sure now.
Sometimes I go on too long. I don't know how Nurse Chapel knows Ilya so well that she knows that headdress is the thing that she likes to wear.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that scene.
I don't know how she another instance of a character who doesn't really have any shape. They're just sort of throwing her lines because somebody needs to say this.
Yeah, this has to happen.
Like the character who played Yeoman Rand in the original series, she's in the transporter. Why she's in the transporter room, that I don't know. I forget her name. Do you remember her name?
I do not.
Anyway, they also, in the transporter room, they have sort of like crisscrossing metal planking, metal stuff on the floor. I don't know if you noticed the floor. I don't know why that would be necessary. Why in a ship like the Enterprise would you have what looks like the floor that you would have on a tuna boat or something? Yeah. And they got the guys working the controls. They're behind shields in the transporter room. That went in the space of one movie. That way.
Yeah.
What a dumb idea, right? So you can't talk. You can't have the people who are operating the transporter talk to the folks on the pads on the platform. That's not good, right?
No.
You need to have your characters able to communicate with each other. Right? Anyway, I think that I've beaten them up enough. I don't know if I have any other criticisms.
I don't think I did either.
But Persis Kambata apparently passed away quite a while ago. I think she died over a decade ago. So she's not with us anymore. I'm sure you're aware of what happened to Stephen Collins. We won't go into that as unpleasant business.
Right.
DeForest Kelly has passed away. Jimmy Doohan's passed away. Leonard Nimoy's passed away. I think Majel Barrett has passed away. Gene Roddenberry's passed away.
Mark Leonard.
He's passed away, right?
Yeah, I believe he did.
Yeah, he played the Klingon in the opening scene of this.
Yeah, and he was on the original series.
A couple of times on the original series. Yeah. He played Spock's father, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I believe so. Yeah.
So he's passed away. Who else is on the death list here? George, is it Takei or Takai?
George, I've always said Takei. He's still alive.
He's still alive.
Yeah.
And
Nichelle Nichols is still alive.
Nichelle Nichols is still alive.
I think that's them.
Some health problems now.
Yeah, them and Shatner. I think they're the last three.
Yeah, and Robert Wise passed away. Harv Bennett passed away. So there's. I guess it's kind of nice that this film is getting some appreciation from people. Because it was, it does look like a big budget movie. It has its pleasures. The music is nice, and it is kind of an interesting experience if you're in the right frame of mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun to see the big shots of the Enterprise at the beginning, but it's just there's too much of it.
Yeah, well, I always felt like kind of a spoil sport because one thing I would say about Douglas Trumbull's special effects is I never really felt the sense of size.
Yeah.
They look nice, and his effects work for 2001 is terrific. But with all the things he did, including Blade Runner, I never really felt the size of the things. And I never really felt the size of this model, the Enterprise, even though apparently it ended up costing them $1 million or more to do. It doesn't really feel as big as they are, all the music would suggest.
All right.
But maybe that's just me. I don't know. I don't think any of the V'ger stuff is that visually spectacular.
No.
Plenty of other movies that have had similar things. I don't see why anybody would be that terribly impressed with this. I mean, it's nice. I'm not knocking it. It's pleasant enough, but a story would have been nicer.
Oh yeah.
So I think people should watch the movie. And if they enjoy it, that's great. It's an optimistic movie. Any movie that ends with the logo, "The human adventure is just beginning."
Yep.
That's something I can agree with and give my full support to. So it's worth watching, and if it's available. Oh, one thing I did want to mention. I don't know if we covered this yet. The problem with normalizing of audio. You know what normalization means when they do it to audio tracks?
Yeah. I do it. I do it on this show.
Okay, so you do it.
Yeah.
Basically, what it means for anybody that is listening to us that doesn't know, it basically means you take the loudest sounds and you lower them, and you bring the lowest sounds up so that all the sound is in a narrow band. I think we did touch on this a little bit earlier. And so people who are watching this on Paramount Plus may be a little disappointed by the sort of weird sound that it has at times, because it brings that normalization process brings out some strange background sounds. So that's kind of disappointing.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is going to get a physical release or not.
Well, I hope so. I think it's worthy of a physical release. And I would really be surprised if they didn't, because just judging from the reaction of people online, a lot of folks liked the movie, and I think they would probably want to own that. And up to this point, there are probably people that have probably half a dozen different DVDs already.
Yeah.
So one more probably wouldn't hurt. I never bought the motion picture because I was so disappointed. It was, a very disappointing experience for me when I went to see it the first time. So I never purchased the DVD or the VHS tape, or I have VHS and DVDs for all the other movies, but not for the motion picture, because I did buy the soundtrack album though.
Right. Yeah.
So I did my part, and I bought the program. So that's
Yeah.
they got my money.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I recommend people watching it. Like I said, when I watch it, I enjoy it. We've done this with other movies. You watch it and enjoy it, and when you go to talk about it, you start picking it apart. But it's good. I like it.
Yeah, I hope nobody would allow our comments to ruin the movie for them. I don't see why it should. I know I've had that experience where
I mean, it's 40 years old at this point, right? This was the 40th anniversary. Is that what this release is?
79, so it's 80, I guess it's close to 40 years, 30, 40 years, something like that. It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
But sometimes if you feel a sort of affection for a film, particularly if it is a flawed film, you don't want anybody saying anything nasty about it. And I don't mean to be nasty, because I'm absolutely completely in sympathy with Star Trek, and all the original characters. In fact, one thing I would say, based on my friend's reaction to the film, was he was impressed by the fact that you were seeing these people on the screen. There is something extraordinarily powerful about seeing Kirk and Spock and McCoy, all those people together on the screen in their roles. So Spock almost is like a religious icon.
Right. Yeah.
It's impossible to see him appear on the screen in this and not feel something. So that is another important thing. We get an opportunity to see this iteration of the series that never went on to anything. They continue to make movies, but it's really completely different thing. But this is sort of like a little standalone, this little chapter. It almost gives you an insight into the development of a franchise, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if there was any other franchises like this. I mean, Star Wars was beginning to be that, but Star Trek, to go from being a TV series to being a series of movies, and then to go back to TV and to have several different TV series, it must be the most committed fandom in the world. So I guess we're always going to be getting new versions of Star Trek, as we've talked about on this show. I'm not crazy about the stuff they're doing nowadays. But if they look back to this movie and they draw some inspiration from the ideology, the philosophy of it, maybe not so much the storytelling technique, that would probably be a good thing to get back to that.
I would like to see it. I'd like to see more of the old Star Trek.
Yeah, well, William Shatner would probably still be game, but I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, it might be one of those things where maybe it's time to finally say that's something of a bygone age. Maybe we should come up with the modern equivalent without.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about like the new, the newer streaming series that they have now, Picard and all that. And I'm like, I don't understand why they need to stick with the Enterprise or with these same characters. Why can't they make? There must be millions of other ships that they could do stories of. You know what I'm saying? Like, still call it Star Trek.
Yeah.
Just do a different ship.
Well, they should be prepared to do that, because they have done it before, right? They did Voyager and Deep Space Nine and Next Generation and Enterprise, and so it shouldn't be hard. It's just that we're living in an age now where the style of the storytelling that's popular doesn't really suit these types of stories, in my opinion.
Yeah. Here's an idea that I had a few years ago, and I was like, this would be perfect for like the CW. You just do a show about Starfleet Academy, and you make it, about a group of teenagers attending the academy, and you just do that 90210 version of Star Trek.
Right.
I don't understand why no one's done that yet.
Well, this one of these cartoon series, I think they have at least one cartoon series on now. That is,
the Lower Decks. I think is what it's called. Kind
of similar to that idea. And I know they were talking about doing a Starfleet Academy movie at some point. I'm not sure if it was after the third one or after the fourth one that they said they might try that.
Right.
But yeah, I suppose anything, if you have good stories, then that's all that's important. I think that one of the mistakes they make is they spend too much time explaining why all these characters are together. We don't need all that. Put the folks on a ship, get it out to space, and let's get on with it, for Christ's sake. I mean, whatever story they come up with, whatever explanation, it's all going to be nonsense anyway.
Yeah.
So let's not. When the first Star Trek came on the air, it was full blown, right? There was not, oh, we're going to have to travel over there to get on the Enterprise. This next ship is leaving. No, get on the ship.
Yeah.
You're on the ship.
Yeah, there was no exposition. There was no, let's spend 10 minutes with each character to introduce them to you. You learned who they were as the show progressed.
Exactly. Starts right at the beginning with Commander Pike commanding the ship, and all the details of things that the audience had to sort of figure out from watching. Completely different from what Lost in Space did, which was done at the same time and had a sort of traditional approach of, we got to introduce the characters and where are they going, what the mission is, and see them take off, and then something goes wrong and then they get lost in space. None of that. That's not the type of story they were telling. Star Trek, they wanted to have a platform so they could do these individuals, so go to different planets, meet different aliens, and settle their hash.
Yeah.
And the only way you can do that is if you have your characters all set up, right? It's like if you were doing a detective show and every episode you had to explain how the person became a detective.
Yeah.
That's not the way these things should be done. But anyway, so fortunately, maybe we can do another episode about Wrath of Khan.
Oh yeah, I'd love to.
But that they definitely, with the next 3 movies, they definitely improved enormously. Yeah. So that's a good thing. But I should also say, and then I'm compelled to add, I never felt that any of the movies, any of them that they ever did, even including the new ones, were as good as the best episodes of the original series.
Yeah.
The best episodes of the original series and the best episodes of the Next Generation are better than any of the movies.
Yeah.
And I say that with all the affection and love that I have for the movies. It's just that those types of stories work better as episodic television, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. Yeah, some of those old episodes are just spectacular.
They're really good. And it's surprising to me in watching even some of the earliest episodes like Charlie X. Charlie X is a great episode. And the performances from Shatner and Nimoy and DeForest Kelley, terrific. They were that good that early on. That was like the second show to air, So that and Doomsday Machine and there's a couple of others that are famous, City on the Edge of Forever, which we already mentioned. Those are terrific. Doomsday Machine, I always thought was like perfect. If they could have done that as a movie, that would have been incredible, right? Yep. I mean, in a sense, this movie is kind of like the Doomsday.
Yeah.
Just had all the drama and excitement and suspense taken out of it.
Yeah, I like the fun episodes, like the Harry Mudd episodes and
Mud Swimming.
Those are yeah.
And The Trouble with Tribbles.
Trouble with Tribbles is a good one.
And I know that Quentin Tarantino was a fan of a piece of the action because he was talking about doing something similar. Would have been interesting to see what he could have come up with. But yeah, the comedy episodes, and I guess that ended up in the movie series. They did that with The Voyage Home. The comedy episodes were proof that those were characters that were familiar enough to the audience. They were fleshed out enough so you could actually have fun with them.
Yeah. I think even in the first season, the first series they done recently on the streaming, what was it called? Was it
Discovery?
No, was it Discovery? Anyways, one of the newer seasons, they actually brought back the Harry Mudd character.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was played by the guy from The Office, Rainn Wilson, I think.
Is he supposed to actually be the same Harry Mudd? Or?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, because the show takes place, I guess, in the past or something. I don't really remember. I didn't really watch it, but I just remember seeing him playing that character.
Well, in a way, that becomes a crutch and also a handicap for the new shows. They're constantly digging through the old things to try to bring back, like, for instance, the fact that they're advertising the 4th season of Picard while the 3rd season is still on.
Right.
sort of an indication, because the fourth season supposedly has all the original actors coming back. They're sort of saying, yeah, these episodes that are airing right now, that kind of
Yeah.
hang on, the reinforcements will be arriving soon.
Yeah. Plus, I think one of the shows is going. Its new season is going back to Commander Pike. Will be
Yes.
and I'm like,
Well, I guess that's the concept of that show.
yeah,
I can't remember any of the names of the new shows. I used to be very good at remembering all
yeah.
the different versions, but I think it's Star Trek Discovery is the
Discovery,
first.
it may be.
That's
Yeah,
the first one they did, right?
I think so.
And then they did Picard, and now they have another one called Strange New Worlds or something.
Stranger World. I think that's the one that's going to have Commander Pike. Maybe
Right.
that's it. Yeah.
I wish them luck, but I think the biggest handicap they have is that they got the wrong guy as the showrunner. That
Oh yeah.
Kurtzman guy is the same guy that did the Mummy movie.
Yep.
And I don't know why they picked him. I don't know how he managed to get that job.
I have no idea. He must have he must have pitched him a really good idea and then didn't follow through with it.
I guess. Well, he has some talented writers. One of the guys, I forget his name, the author who wrote that superhero novel that won the Pulitzer Prize or whatever. I think he's one of the writers on Picard. But as we've said before, as I've said before on previous episodes, I don't really watch these things. I just watch Red Letter Media's reviews.
That's what I do. I just watch them talk about Picard.
I get it. I get the gist of it from that.
Yeah.
And I'd rather that they suffer rather than I have to suffer all that.
Yeah, we can just look at the clips that they put up.
But the world being in the shape that it's in now, I'm practically on the verge, on a moment-by-moment basis. I have to find a reason to not just jump out of a window or cut my wrists. So the last thing I want to do is be putting on the sort of terrible, depressing, grim, sophomoric garbage that they've been turning out lately. I hope I didn't put that too strongly. Hope I didn't offend anybody.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's fine. It's just that it's not for me.
It's not for everybody. Yeah.
I want to see an adventure.
Yep.
I don't want this grim dark stuff.
I want to see more of Andrea the android.
Who is he from?
That was the woman from the
yes,
with the
the
V
X,
thing. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, well, I'm surprised she doesn't have her own show, but
Yeah,
now they're digging through the archives.
That'd be a good one to bring back.
I'm waiting for them to bring back that funny poodle.
Yeah,
and
with
with the little antenna.
Oh yeah, had the unicorn horn on it.
Yes. That's what I'm waiting for.
Yeah.
A show that's just that poodle and a bunch of tribbles.
Yep. And what they'll do is they'll just recreate that exact thing in CGI. They'll just create a dog in a costume in CGI.
Well, you're probably right about that. Because there aren't any poodles anymore.
Yeah. You can't get that costume. Nobody can make that anymore.
It's too bad they don't have any behind the scenes footage of them shooting the poodle scene.
Yeah.
How they could provoke the poodle to being vicious.
And
A vicious poodle with antenna and a unicorn horn.
Yeah. See how many times it peed and shit on Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah, that would be worth. I know they're doing I think it's Netflix is doing a thing about the making of The Godfather, a drama about.
I think that's Paramount Plus is putting that up there.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I've seen the trailer for it.
Maybe they'll do a making of a drama about the making of Star Trek. Yes.
Yeah.
Have a whole episode about the poodle.
Yeah, that'd be good. All right, so we both recommend everybody watch Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Yes.
Now, I know you said that you watched it on the Paramount Plus. Did you subscribe to it, or is it just something they're offering for like free?
No, you have to subscribe. Yeah.
Okay.
And I actually, they have both the original version of Star Trek: The Motion Picture and the new version.
New version. Right.
So you have the opportunity to compare the two and to see if there's any significant difference.
All right.
And they have all the other movies in the original series, at least a couple of the newer ones. So it's I guess if you're a Star Trek fan, you really
it's worth getting that. Yeah,
it's worth getting, and you don't have any choice because I don't think it's on any other channels or any other streaming platforms.
Unless you want to wait for a physical, which I'm sure they probably will eventually do a physical release, but they're probably trying to get people to sign up for their Paramount Plus first.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to know what the status of physical media is right now because with the pandemic and with a lot of retailers that may have closed, uh, I guess everything would have to be sold through Amazon or
You can
online.
still get them at Walmart.
Oh, that's right. I'm speaking to
Yeah.
somebody who knows better than I do. But do they still have a significant physical media
Yep.
collection? Yeah.
Still get new DVDs in every Tuesday.
Well, that must be.
New releases every Tuesday.
You must be happy for that,
Yeah.
right? Get a chance to see.
Yep.
You get a discount, I trust.
Yeah, I do get a discount.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Well, I'm sure if I was in your situation, my walls would be packed with,
Yeah.
DVDs. But for the average person, it really is hard to. Although this is one of the reasons why I mentioned that problem with the audio. That's something that's always going to be.
Yeah.
They're going to be adding that normalization thing to all the movies that they put up. So if you want to hear the original sound mix, you got to get the physical media version.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of people don't care about that, but it matters to me, and it makes a big difference if you're, especially if
Oh,
you're
it
wearing,
does. Yeah.
if you're using headphones. It's very distracting. So, and I'm going to try to capture that so I can demonstrate it at some point.
Okay.
And I'll add that to this video or whatever.
All right, that'll work. All right. So where can everybody find your movies at?
Well, Demon Resurrection is on Tubi TV. It's pay-per-view on Amazon Prime. It's on Zumo TV. It's on a bunch of other platforms. Check your local listings. And my first film I've remastered it's called Sleepless Nights. It's a vampire movie in the style of Dark Shadows and that type of thing. And I've just finished re-editing it, and that'll be out hopefully on all the same types of streaming platforms within the next couple of months. I'm just putting some final touches to it. So, but that's Demon Resurrection and Sleepless Nights. There are Facebook pages for both. There are Twitter pages for both, unless Elon Musk decides to throw me off.
Right.
And I'm on Facebook and Twitter under my name, so people can find me there, and they'll probably be very disappointed.
Yeah, I just rewatched Demon Resurrection the other night. Watched it
Oh,
on
did
Tubi.
you?
Even though I got the physical, I watched it on Tubi. That way you can get a little bit of money from it.
I appreciate that. I hope everybody will follow suit.
Yeah, watch it on Tubi.
Just keep it on in constant rotation on Tubi TV.
I still enjoy it. It's still great.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I think it. I don't know if this other film, Sleepless Nights, is going to be quite as impressive to people as that, because it's from an earlier time. I mean, the movie's almost 25 years old. But I'm glad to hear that Demon Resurrection is still getting good reviews.
Oh yeah, still enjoy it.
I like it too.
Yeah, I would hope that you would.
Yes.
It might be kind of hard to continue to sell your movie if you didn't really care for it.
That would be really torture. I mean, Demon Resurrection is pretty old too. So if I had gone the last decade talking about Demon Resurrection and I didn't like it,
Yeah.
that'd be really, really hard. I'd have to be a much better actor.
Yeah. All right. Well, you can find this show on all the major streaming platforms. Just you do a search on Google. We pop up, all of them will pop up there, and then you can get, of course, the video versions will be on your YouTube channel.
Right.
And you can get all of our merch at our TeePublic store. And at the time of this recording, everything right now is 35% off. So $13 tees. Go get them.
That's a good deal. Yeah.
Yeah, that is real good. Yep.
So the next time we do an episode, we're going to all have to be wearing all the merch.
Yeah. I'll have to get a coffee mug now.
There you go. Yeah. I see you got a Captain Kirk in the background there.
Yeah, I showed it off on another episode that we done, but this is, I don't have anything from the motion picture, but this is from the original series.
Well, that's impressive. He looks
I
like
mean,
he's
it didn't come out. I think it's a reissue. I think this came out in this was released in '94, but.
And does he have the girdle on underneath the costume?
I think he does. Yeah, it was an accessory.
Because I see a little band around his waist.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, that's nice.
I picked it up at a convention for $5.
Oh, that's a good deal. Yeah, and you're keeping it in its original packaging.
You have to. You have to.
They drum you out of the Federation if you open the package?
Same with I got a Tom Baker action figure still packaged up also.
Oh, cool. Well, someday your children or children's children will be able to make a little money by selling all
They could
all
sell
your
it for
stuff.
$10.
No,
I'd always dreamed about maybe getting it autographed, but I can tell that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. So
you wanted to get Shatner's autograph?
yeah.
Well, they got that so regimented now. I mean, it's like, even like what they were doing with Stan Lee towards the end.
Yeah.
You got to pay a lot of money to
Just
be
even,
in.
yeah, just
Great,
even
great.
get, yeah, the event itself probably cost more than I would want to pay for just to get in the scene. But I've always been a fan, even before the movies. I was always a fan of like Shatner
Oh yeah, he's
from
very
like
good.
other stuff that he done. So
It was a sort of a common thing, and I guess it is even now, to sort of say that he's a ham and he overacts.
yeah,
But it's a type of style of acting which really is an old type of melodramatic acting that was the way the acting was done in that period that he was working. But
yeah,
when you see him in some things, you realize, and I think it's true of the original series as well, he's one of the reasons why it works.
oh yeah,
You have some of those scenes in Star Trek where he's standing stripped to the waist, talking to a bunch of brains, and you say, if this guy wasn't really a great actor,
yeah,
this wouldn't work.
yeah,
It would just be hilarious. But he makes it work, and it's
yeah,
complete commitment, the complete sincerity of it. No matter how over the top it may seem, it's authentic. It has he means it.
yeah. And of course and I guess because of his what everybody thinks is like his overacting, he comes off really good in comedies. Like when he
Yes,
plays like a comedy, yeah, he's really good in those.
even in those comedy episodes of the original series, he was very
Yeah,
funny.
yeah,
That's true. Yeah, there's a channel on YouTube where the person is posting all these things that Shatner did before Star Trek, and a lot of them are episodes from TV dramas, like these sort of plays, one-shot plays that they would do back then.
yeah,
I saw a couple of them. He was really good. You know, the whole episodes usually focus on his character, and he's terrific in them. But it's that old style of acting.
yeah,
It's not like the naturalistic type of acting, this rather boring acting that you get nowadays.
yeah.
He was also in a pilot for a Nero Wolf TV series. Is it Nero Wolf? Is that the name of the character?
I think so.
Yes,
Yeah,
Nero Wolf, the detective who stays at home and he sends his assistant out to do all the detecting work.
yeah,
And he comes back to him with all the details, and Nero Wolf figures it out. Well, Shatner is the guy that he sends out to uh, collect all the data that he's going to use to solve the crime. And Shatner's terrific, and it's very entertaining. That's the distinction I would make. It's not a question of what's realistic. It's a question of what is entertaining.
entertaining. Yeah.
He's fun to watch.
Oh
Even in
yeah.
terrible movies, he's enjoyable to watch. Uh, there was one that he did about folks on a plane where there's some sort of supernatural artifact that's in the cargo hold, and it's starting to cause all sorts of strange stuff happening. It was a TV
Yeah.
movie, and he's playing, I don't forget, it was like an ex-priest or something. He's the reason to watch the movie.
Yeah.
Always entertaining. So, and that doesn't mean that he's always on target. Sometimes he
Yeah.
goes, there was one that he did in his lean years where he plays a sort of psychopath character, and they have him all dressed up in these sort of silly costumes, like colorful sweaters and things.
Right.
And
Yeah.
just looks ridiculous, and his performance is, not quite there. But otherwise, he's good.
Yep. All right. So we'll just end this one with our William Shatner praise.